Faites l'appel, M. Greffier, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le sénateur Routier.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Osef. Monsieur le sénateur McLean. Monsieur le sénateur Ghost. Monsieur le sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Green.
Présent.
Madame le sénateur Ferguson.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Alier.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le connétable de Sainte-Marie. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Sauveur. Monsieur le connétable de Gruvel.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Madame le député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député de Gruvel.
Présente.
Madame le député Hilton. Monsieur le député Lefondre. Madame le député de la Trinité.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Louis de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Noël. Madame le député de Saint-Jean. Monsieur le député Higgins. Monsieur le député Masson.
Présent.
Madame le député Pinel.
Présente.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Bryans.
Présent.
Madame le député de Saint-Pierre.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Rondel.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Mezek. Monsieur le député Louis de Saint-Salier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le député Doublé. Monsieur le député Labbé.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Wickenden. Monsieur le député Bree.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Norton.
Présent.
Monsieur le député MacDonald.
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le député McClinton.
M. Doyle.
Prions Dieu, notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et que nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes les délibérations, étant accompagnées de ta bénédiction, réussissent au bien et au soulagement du peuple qu'il t'a plu de commettre à le soin. Quand nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé, Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le sénateur Osef.
Sir, Senator Osef is out the island on state's business. He's been delayed returning to the island this morning and hopes to get here by about 10:30.
Monsieur le sénateur McLean.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Ghost.
Sir, Senator Gorse is also out the island on state's business.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
C'est faux.
Madame le connétable de Sainte-Marie. Je jurais que Madame le connétable de Sainte-Marie est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen,
Sir, the Constable of St One's has a hospital appointment at 9 o'clock and hopes to join us by 10, and I ask you to be excused, sir.
Il faut excuser.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade,
Présent.
Madame la députée Southern,
It's a very nice tie, Deputy.
Madame la députée Hilton,
So I would ask that the deputy be marked defo excuse. She is out of the island on family business.
Defo excusé.
Monsieur le député Lefondre,
Similarly, defo excusé.
Monsieur le député Tadier, Monsieur le député Higgins,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Mezek, Madame la députée Dublé,
Sir, can I ask that Deputy Doublé be marked defo excuse for family reasons?
Defo excusé.
Monsieur le député Wickenden.
Malade.
Le jury que Monsieur le député Wickenden est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé. Les états sont bons, monsieur.
Les états sont constitués. Under A, perhaps I can just remind members that tomorrow at 9:30 we have a special sitting of the Assembly to bid His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor farewell, and can I say that after that sitting the States will adjourn briefly. The reason for making the announcement now is just really to tell the public that any members who want to come to the Royal Square to wave His Excellency goodbye would be very, very welcome to do so. B and C are as tabled on the consolidated order paper. Under D, notification of lodged propositions, draft budget statement amendment lodged by Deputy Labby, P109. Draft budget statement, second amendment lodged by the Deputy of St Ouen, third amendment lodged by Deputy Mezek, fourth amendment lodged by Senator Ferguson, fifth amendment lodged by the Deputy of St John. Millennium Town Park, additional open space and public parking, P123, lodged by the Connétable of St Helier. The draft public elections amendment number 7, Jersey Law, P124, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. The draft public elections amendment number 8, Jersey Law, P125, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. The draft amendment number 30 of Standing Orders of the States of Jersey, P126, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Taxation of high-value residents, P127, lodged by Deputy Southern. Draft Sea Fisheries Amendment number 3, Jersey Law, P128, lodged by the Minister for the Environment. The draft Animal Health Jersey Law Appointed Day Act, P129, lodged by the Minister for the Environment. There is nothing under E, F, G or H. Questions, written questions. The Minister of Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mussell regarding the taking of breath samples from people aged under 18. The Minister of Health and Social Services will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding the funding of family, nursing and home care. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding a grant from the Jersey Innovation Fund in the case of the log filler proposal. Minister of Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy of St John regarding disability claims under the income support system. The Minister of Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the role of the Jersey Police Complaints Authority in overseeing police investigations. The Minister of Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding reports produced by the States of Jersey Police following a complaint against one or more of its officers. Her Majesty's Attorney General will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the human rights compliance of de Grevemore provisions. Her Majesty's Attorney General will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the human rights compliance of remise des biens provisions. The Minister for Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding the detention of dogs by customs officers. The Minister for Treasury and Resources will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy of St John regarding companies held within the portfolio of Jersey Telecom. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding the impact of control of housing and work legislation. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding the impact of benefit changes on low-income families. The Minister for Housing will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding ministerial control over the operational decisions of Andium Homes. For the benefit of members of the public, the questions in relation to de Grèvemont and Remise des Biens, those are two bankruptcy provisions in the island. We come now to oral questions.
So I wonder if I may propose that the defo be raised on the Constable of St Peters.
Proposed defo be raised. Defo is raised. We come to oral questions. The first question, Deputy Mezek will ask of the Minister for Housing.
Thank you, sir. Following the announcement of the UK government in the autumn budget that it intends to ban letting agent fees for tenants, will the Minister consider implementing such a policy in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I can be very brief because the answer is yes. We will be planning to review letting agencies' fees for tenants during 2017.
Supplementary.
That completely does away with my supplementary. I'm grateful for that answer.
We come to the next question.
So there are some supplementaries. From
Oh, all right. I didn't think that any clarification was needed, but please do.
Thank you, sir. The first piece of clarification that is needed is, can the Minister give some information about what the review will entail? Will there be any consultancy, or will it be something that, is it a policy that this Minister and the Government is actively seeking to pursue and introduce during this term of office?
Yes, sir, this, as I said, was something that we will review because we need a bit of clarity, and also working with the Consumer Council, who brought out a review on this back earlier in the year, I think, and they raised six points that needed clarification. So nothing's ruled in, sir, and nothing's ruled out.
Would the Minister be able to give some clarification on what those other 6 points include, and state whether it also includes charges that are levied by agents for all landlords for renewals of contracts, which the residential tenancy law interestingly says a tenant has the right to request a lease contract, but the landlord has a right to charge for giving that contract.
So, excuse me. I'd like to make clear, sir, that the majority of letting agents and landlords operate in a professional manner, and they do play an important role. The Consumer Council did highlight six areas, and I've got them here. So, lease drafting and renewal, agency introduction fee, credit check, agency holding fees, card charge, and viewing fees. So we will be working kind of with that. But as I said, nothing's ruled in and nothing's ruled out.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And I just seek clarification over the word review. It's quite a wide term and might mean many things. Is this a review with a view to action as necessary, or is it review so that we can park it in a report and put it on somebody's top shelf?
Oh, sir, top shelves. This is a review, as I said, nothing's ruled in and nothing's ruled out. But also, we have to, if we have to make some changes, sir. I hope we can use the residency tenancy law, which was used kind of a little while ago, to outlaw recharging of utilities. So hopefully, if it does need change, and I'm not saying it does or it doesn't, I think probably it does, but I'm not committing myself to anything. Hopefully, so we can use this bit of law.
If I may, sir, is the Minister aware of one particular agent who charges £200 for pressing a button on the computer to get a new version of the licence with the dates changed?
No, sir, I'm not. But as I said, sir, the majority of letting agents and landlords do operate in a professional manner.
Final supplementary.
Yes, sir. Just to confirm, I know the example Deputy Southern's talking about, and it does happen in the island. Included in this review that she's spoken of, will there be any consideration of a code of conduct, voluntary or otherwise, for letting agents and estate agents?
So that's one possible outcome, or we can use the if necessary, we can use the hopefully use the residential tenancy law.
We'll come to question 2, which Deputy Higgins will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise members what tangible outcomes have come from the Access to Justice review, and in particular what assistance is being given to litigants in person as a result of the review?
Thank you, sir. The third interim report of the Access to Justice review was presented to members on the 1st of August this year. So far, the review has covered a broad range of topics, all of which are relevant to improving access to justice, and has served as an important examination of these areas. The review has identified positive examples of work already being undertaken to improve access to justice, for example, by the Citizens Advice Bureau and the Jersey Legal Information Board. A simultaneous piece of work to review the rules of the Royal Court has also been undertaken, and a review of administrative justice has produced a consultation paper with a final report due soon. The review has highlighted the benefits of mediation as an alternative means of resolving disputes and encouraged those bodies who offer mediation to further promote their services to islanders. The initial trend is encouraging, with an increase in the take-up of mediation services, particularly community mediation, which is offered by the Jersey Citizens Advice. The review's advisory panel has been made aware of some challenges that face litigants in person, for example, in obtaining court transcripts, and has also sought reassurance as to how a litigant in person is supported when appearing in court. The review is ongoing and now has a focus on legal aid, affordability, and the legal profession.
Yes, thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for the answer. With regard to litigants in person, one of the biggest problems that they face is equality of arms. For example, if they are, in litigation with a government department, the government department is supported by Crown advocates or the law officers, and the litigant in person has to rely on their own means. And therefore, there's a total sort of imbalance in the scales of justice. What can the Assistant Minister or Minister tell us about how they're going to deal with this inequality of arms?
If a litigant in person chooses to represent themselves within the court, I am aware that the courts themselves, across all of the courts, do help to do their best to ensure that the witness or the litigant in person is able to put their case effectively. And I know that the courts, the judges, do go out of their way to ensure that they do hear the evidence that is required. So I have been reassured by that fact when I've spoken to the judges.
Thank you, sir. One of the problems that litigants in person face is not only the fact that they have to stand in the court themselves and argue their case, although sometimes there is an amicus curiae. One of the main problems is the compilation of the evidence and preparing all the papers that need to be put before the court. What assistance is going to be given in that way? For example, is there any way of the court providing some paralegal assistance or the state to do that so that there is this balance between the state and the individual?
One of the things I have been really encouraged by in carrying out this route is the use of mediation, trying to avoid going to court. We have been encouraged that a number of people are following that course right now. With regard to additional support being given to somebody who does use the court process, I believe that's something which we can include within our review as a suggestion. But if the Deputy would like to make a representation to our panel, I'd be very welcome to hear those views.
I thank the Assistant Minister for his invitation. I will. On this particular issue, I feel very, very strongly about it because there are many people who have been let down by the legal system. I'm afraid the legal aid system...
Question.
Sorry, question? I'm just...
Not speech.
Okay. I'm trying to put it in context, yes. So many people are suffering because the legal aid system isn't helping them. And so can I ask the Assistant Minister what is being done about the legal aid system itself and giving people proper access to it?
As the Deputy will be aware from the most recent interim report which was published, the review of legal aid is ongoing. We are having discussions with the Law Society about how they are progressing with their own review, and we will be awaiting the outcome of those discussions.
Well,
Perhaps can the Assistant Ministers tell us when the Law Society review will be finished, because it could take years and people are being failed by the system.
We've had some initial thoughts from the legal aid, from the legal profession, and we are due to have more meetings with them in the next month or so. It's anticipated that our work will be finished in July of this coming year, and within that there will be the proposals from the legal aid on the legal aid.
We'll come to question 3, which Deputy Mussell will ask of the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister activate the break clause in the contract with Condor Ferries and put the operation of the ferry route out to tender, and if so, when, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I assume the Deputy is referring to the option contained within Clause 6 of the current operating agreement. Clause 6, sir, contains the option to activate a 3-year wind down on the 7th anniversary of the commencement date, within which time the states would have to identify a replacement operator. Whilst there have been operational difficulties with car and passenger services following the introduction of Condor's liberation, our Lifeline freight services, on which we all heavily rely, have continued to operate at almost 100% reliability, and it is perhaps worth mentioning to members Condor's freight operated without a single breach of service during the recent storm surge, for which credit is due. The recently published Comprehensive Service Review establishes a basis by which additional capital investment by the operator, and I stress, sir, by the operator, could be made. The Deputy asked me why not, sir, and that is because I am committed and remain committed to working with Condor and our colleagues in Guernsey to secure a long-term, sustainable and commercially viable car passenger and freight service to and from the islands.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. We have seen in the headlines that the possible introduction of subsidies onto the ferry route might be a way forward in order to secure the sustainability of the route. Can the Minister please outline his position on subsidising the ferry route service? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think that's one of the problems with giving too much attention to headlines, and actually the headlines are not always representative of the actual facts. I have distributed the Comprehensive Service Review, a copy of, to all members, and there is a meeting next Tuesday afternoon with the Chief Executive Officer of Condor to answer any questions. There are no plans for subsidies, sir, and my position at this moment in time, and is likely to remain during my tenure, is that I would not be supportive in any way, shape or form of offering a subsidy to Condor.
Any questions? Thank you. We go on to question 4, which Deputy Kevin Lewis will ask of the Minister for Education.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister update the Assembly on what progress, if any, has been made regarding the provision of student loans, student grants, or any other form of assistance provided to people in higher education?
Minister.
Excuse me. Thank you, sir, and thank you to the Deputy for allowing me to bring members up to speed on where we are with this issue. An additional 600,000 will be added to the higher education budget for 2017 to increase the maintenance grant excuse me, and threshold levels from September next year. That means more students will receive more funding help from the state. Next week, our officers and others from Guernsey and the Isle of Man
are having a joint meeting at the UK Department of Business Innovation and Skills to discuss higher education issues. A meeting has also been arranged with a representative of the Student Loan Company to discuss possibilities for extending the scheme to Jersey students. We continue to work on the Campus Jersey concept, providing more degrees on island, and we also recently visited Colin University, increasing our links with a view to making it a real, viable alternative for Jersey students, not least because the degree tuition is free. I also welcome a scrutiny review in this area.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his reply, sir. The 600,000 is very good news indeed. There was a problem a while ago with local families applying for student loans in the UK, some actually receiving them. Could the Minister inform the Assembly whether these loans are safe or they have to be repaid immediately?
Thank you, sir. In relation to the loans, at the time when this first became an issue, we wrote to all parents to say not to accept these loans because we felt they were in breach or could actually breach the requirements of the Student Loan Company. Some people chose to ignore that situation and took out those loans. At a further juncture, the Student Loan Company then realised the mistake that had happened and began to ask for those loans back. We then said to anybody who had been in that situation to come back and discuss with us to see if there was anything we could particularly do for them at that point in time. We only had one family at that point come back to us. Thank you.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned the possibility of courses at Cairn University because they're free. Has he taken into effect a possible Brexit and what effect that might have on those free courses?
Yes, sir, we have. Thank you very much for the question. We actually asked that question of them, and they seemed very surprised that we were even concerned about it because they take in a huge intake of international students right across the board. The prospect of Brexit means there are potential changes and opportunities for Jersey. Members may not be aware, but the UK Student Loan Company have said that from September 2018, students from Europe will no longer be eligible for the loans. So we will be asking whether there is now scope for the Jersey students to join. One suggestion is for the State of Jersey to underwrite loans for our students by paying in the money we spend on higher education annually instead of having a Jersey-based grant system.
Supplementary. Oh, I'm so sorry. Deputy Master, I'd written you now. But,
Thank you, sir. Yes, the Minister mentioned a series of meetings, and of course he'll be aware that the scrutiny panel is doing a review into higher education as well. Will the Minister give an undertaking to make available to scrutiny the minutes of those meetings as and when they happen? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Of course we will. Thank you.
One supplementary.
Thank you, sir. It's extremely sad, sir, that I've heard recently that in the British Isles at the moment, parents are absolutely convinced that their children will not be better off than they are. This is the first time this has happened since the war, that the children will not be better off than the parents. So they need all the assistance they can get. And my final supplementary, sir, in his negotiations, will the Minister also be discussing the status of Jersey students regarding local or overseas or national status?
Thank you, sir. Our status remains the same, except for three universities, which is Cambridge and Imperial. I can't remember the third one now. I think that has been Imperial. We're actually having discussions with Cambridge in the next month, I believe. Every other university has now accepted the fact that we are a UK student, so there aren't any problems in those areas.
Deputy Southern, as St Joseph is due to arrive back in the island at 10:30, I propose to take the question, which I think he was going to answer after questions without notice. Come to question 6, which Deputy St John will ask of the Minister for Education.
Thank you, sir. Following approval of the amendment to the medium-term financial plan addition regarding nursery education funding, will the Minister advise what the position with nursery education funding will be from next year and what effect changes introduced under the MTFP have had on the early years partnership agreement?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and thank you excuse me, to the Deputy. Members will have seen the news release that we put out just yesterday saying that we are intending to postpone. So just to give some background to that. Since the MTFP debate, discussions have been taking place in the department and with members of the early years community, including owners of private nurseries. The conclusion has been made that more time is needed before implementing means testing, so it has been delayed until September 2018. This means that the system will remain the same for the next academic year. It was important that we put this out rather like we did with the original discussions in the nursery education funding, because we wanted to make parents fully aware of the situation as early as possible. Registration begins in January, so we decided to put it out just yesterday. Minor amendments have been made to the partnership agreement following suggestions from nursery owners. The changes included removal of out-of-date terminology, but overall the agreement remains largely the same. Means testing has no real impact on the content of the contract, which exists to set out the terms under which nurseries receive the money from the education department.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister be able to advise then what's happening with regards to the funding within his department if it's staying the same for the next academic year? How he is actually funding that money if it's no longer being means tested?
Sorry, I just missed the last part of that.
If means testing is not going ahead for the next academic year, how is the department funding that? Where is that money coming from?
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. We've had discussions with the Treasury. I mean, obviously the money will have to come from somewhere else, so we've looked across the board. We've discussed it with the Treasury Minister and we've discussed it with the Treasurer and indicated to them that we can accommodate it for the moment.
So the Minister said that this likely won't go ahead until September 2018, when of course there may well actually be a new government with different priorities in place at that point. So does he therefore concede that it's possible that this simply may not go ahead at all?
Thank you, sir. No, I don't. Not at this point in time. The Assembly did vote on this quite some time ago. The problem we had, and was accepted by the Assembly, was that the funding for the Nursery Education Fund was under threat because there were so many new applicants for this fund. So St. Michael's is an example, or St. George's, in which case it was unsustainable. So the concept of means testing was accepted. Our problem has been that it's extremely complicated, so we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of what we needed to do, hence the reason for postponing it.
But just to clarify, I thought that this Assembly asked the Minister to go away and introduce means testing in this regard, and it was actually the Minister who brought the overall package to do with nursery funding to the Assembly. And is it not right that the Minister should abide by the Assembly's decision, even if he and the department don't necessarily like it?
I think in the last question, the last answer I've just given, that's the indication I've just given, is that we will continue up down the route of means testing. Our problem is that when the Assembly then said it should be across all schools, all state schools, that complicated the matter, and it's that complication that we have to address.
And perhaps the Minister can elucidate further, because again, that was the will of the Assembly. The Assembly said if we are going to means test, then do it across all schools. And that's something that surely the Minister should be able to reconcile, because that is the will of the Assembly. And if it wasn't possible for actually to means test across all sectors, then the Minister should never have let that go to the floor of the Assembly for debate. Is that not the case?
No, sir. I mean, the situation is quite simple. The Assembly decided that to means test across all nurseries, whether it be private or state's nursery. What we want to do is make sure that we get it absolutely right before we go out there.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister, with regards to the early years partnership agreement, is it not the fact that it was actually agreed at the time when this means testing was happening earlier this year, and that there are issues with regards to whether it's play-based or educational-based nursery provision, and that parental choice, it should be the matter of fact, and that negotiations should continue with regards to revising the partnership agreement?
The discussion is still going on in that particular area. I'll just indicate, this has not been ratified, but indicates our direction of travel, I think, and just should hopefully answer to some degree what the Deputy is asking. and this has been agreed at the moment with all partners, but the actual ratification hasn't happened yet. The Education Department and nursery education funded providers are committed to working together to improve outcomes for children and families. By working in partnership, it is the aim of the Nursery Education Fund to enable the department and nurseries to deliver high-quality preschool education to prepare children for school.
And to question 7, which Deputy Sutherland will ask of the Minister for Social Security.
Thank you, sir. What measures, if any, is the Minister considering to assist Jersey's just about managing working households that would be equivalent to the UK Chancellor's decisions to allow those on universal credit to keep an additional 2p in the pound of their earnings, and to raise the national living wage to £7.50, and if none, why is she not considering such measures?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. As Deputy Chairman of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, the Deputy will already be aware of my commitment in respect of work incentives within the income support system. For the benefit of other members, I will quote from my recent formal response to the scrutiny review of living on a low income. The cash limit available for 2017 for income support does allow for some improvements in component levels and work incentives. Previous ministers have increased the work incentives from the original 6% to the current level of 23%. This level will be considered again during 2017, and the suggestions provided by the panel will be included in those deliberations. It is too soon to say how the additional budget available in 2017 will be allocated, but I can certainly confirm that I would be very keen to improve our incentive levels, if at all possible. The second half of the question refers to a national living wage. As members will be aware, Jersey does not have a national living wage. This is a UK concept that applies to workers aged 25 and above. Jersey has one minimum wage that applies to all age groups. We will be debating the value of the minimum wage later in this session. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister also consider unfreezing the living components of income support in order that all people in receipt of income support should be able to survive?
So it was agreed in the medium-term financial plan that the income support benefits would be frozen for the 3 years up until 2017. And as I've said in my first answer to the Deputy, that the support for income support clients will be reviewed, and we will either increase incentives or benefits, and that will happen in 2017.
So the Minister has talked about steps such as increasing the disregard for earned income from 6 to 23%, which is a laudable step to take, but nonetheless it masks the problem of low-paid work and simply increases the subsidy to low-paid workers and gives no incentive for employers to actually pay a living wage. Does the Minister accept that a significantly higher minimum wage or something moving towards a living wage is actually going to get rid of the need for the taxpayer to subsidise low-paid work, and that it's actually better for everybody to make sure that work pays in the long run?
Thank you, sir. I think I've made it clear in many answers that I have given to the Deputy that the department, Social Security Department, is at the height of their principles is to get people back into work, hence the increase in the disregard to encourage people to do that. It means now that they keep 23%, either 23p in every pound that they earn is disregarded. And we wish to keep that incentive going to get people back into work, which we know is far better all round, in as much it's not just financial, it's from a self-esteem and a social point of view as well.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Sutherland's question actually refers to working households. If you are a household where both people are working, you don't need an incentive to go to work because you are already in work. So the question is actually about what is being done to assist those families, many of whom are struggling and who are not earning enough to make ends meet. So on that basis, what consideration is she prepared to give to looking at what the aims of the national living wage are in the UK, which is to raise what has essentially become their minimum wage to a much higher level so people can actually get by on it. It's about people in work, not those out of work. What are her plans?
I'm sure this will be discussed at length in the debate on the minimum wage, sir. But the national living wage, I must remind the Assembly and the public, is only available to those over 25. The minimum wage in Jersey is available to all of those over 16, so it caters for a much larger branch of the population.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister consider the introduction of a fresh disregard for earnings for the second worker in the family? Because at the moment, the disregard is eaten up by one person's earnings. If the second person wishes to go to work, there is no disregard, and therefore very, very little incentive to work, because every penny you earn will get taken away off your income support.
So the whole review will be put into force by October next year, when we have the wherewithal to increase the income support benefits, but we don't know yet in which way that will be done. I would hope it would be an increase in the incentive, but it's very difficult to say in a year's time what will be the demands on other parts of the income support.
And will she give consideration to the second earner?
We'll give consideration across the board, sir.
We come to question 9, which Deputy Higgins will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise members how many complaints from members of the public, if any, are currently being heard by the State's Employment Board, and summarise the nature of those complaints?
Senator Green.
Thank you, sir. So the State's Employment Board is currently dealing with one complaint from a member of the public. It is a matter of potential litigation, hence it is not appropriate to make further comment.
Can the Assistant Chief Minister tell the Assembly how many complaints have not formally got onto the agenda but have been delayed? For example,
I didn't do that, but have been.
Sorry, have been delayed. In other words, not formally being recorded by the State's Employment Board. I've, on behalf of one constituent, put forward a complaint, and it was delayed. In fact, at one point, it was suspected that a lawyer may be involved, and it was delayed even further. Now that a lawyer is not involved, I've spoken with the Chief Executive, and it's still not being dealt with. So can the Assistant Chief Minister tell us how many people are waiting to get on the complaints list?
Sir, I can't, but what I can say, it's very rare. There isn't a waiting list as such. What happens, sir, is that departments deal with their own complaints. It's only when things go terribly wrong or there is a failure to agree that it might, if it involves a member of staff, might end up with the State's Employment Board, sir.
Final supplementary.
Yes, sir. Will the Assistant Chief Minister agree to making perhaps creating a complaints register so that it is online so that people can actually see how many complaints are being heard either by the State's Employment Board or by any department in which the public have made complaints by, so we can actually see how long it takes for the departments to deal with those complaints?
Sir, the State's Employment Board, as I said, get very few complaints. They are a board that deal with employment matters. Departments do get complaints from time to time, and some of them are of an extremely sensitive and personal nature, particularly when you're talking about social services and social security or health or even education, sir. So it wouldn't be appropriate to start publishing people's details on a register, sir. So the answer is no.
Coming to question 10, which Deputy Muston will ask of the Minister for the Environment.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain what action, if any, he or his department have taken regarding the master plan for Five Oaks that was proposed in the Island Plan 2011?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, since the adoption of the Island Plan 2011, neither the former Minister, myself, nor my department have undertaken any action to progress the proposal to develop supplementary planning guidance for Five Oaks. It's unfortunate, but the progression of proposals set out in the Island Plan are dependent very much on the availability of resources during the 10-year period of that plan. Since the adoption in 2011, the limited resources of the planning policy team in my department have been prioritised on other work, including the delivery of affordable homes, the regeneration of St Helier, and the revision and development of other new supplementary planning guidance to support the objectives of the plan.
Thank you, sir. Well, it comes to no great surprise that St Saviour's once again is put as a bottom priority, or no priority, as the case may be. Can I ask the Minister then, will he be honest with the Assembly then, given the restrictions, and just say that within the period of this Island Plan that actually Five Oaks will not be receiving a master plan, and at least we know where we stand? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I will always be honest with members. I can say to the Deputy that resources are also currently involved in the Master Plan of St Helier, the revision of planning guidance for public planning obligation agreements on space standards, new homes, parking standards, amongst others. We continue to work on future St Helier project and other strategic priorities, and we've given a commitment to do some work in St Bellard's Bay. Planning guidance is usually developed to address specific planning challenges and issues, and I'm always happy to listen to any members, especially Deputy Masson, to get a better understanding of his thoughts about the Five Oaks area. But I would say to him, I drive through the area at least twice every day. I'm fully aware of the importance of green open spaces, and I'd hope you'd appreciate that my views through my work with the future St Helier. I'm aware that this proposal came about probably because open space was more open space was wanted to be safeguarded in the Five Oaks area. But I would say to him, it's always in my thought, and I've raised this issue with officers before, and I will always safeguard open spaces.
Thank you, sir. I'm surprised that the Minister, sir, is confusing supplementary planning guidance with a master plan. I didn't think there was that similarity. However, does the Minister have a list of the master plans and the local development plans that were in the Island Plan, so that he can have a proper schedule of works set up, and then we can all find out when our various local development plans or master plans are actually going to appear?
So I'll just repeat to the Senator that, as I said just now, planning guidance, work on master plan, any work in the planning policy department is done as specific challenges arise, and sometimes very specific challenges arise during the course of a plan which have to override others. We will, and I will, prioritise my work as I see fit. Certainly the Senator's raised the issue of St Bellard's, and that's been brought up the agenda and is something we've committed to do during this Island Plan. I fully understand, as the Senator would expect, the difference between supplementary planning guidance and master planning, but it's all work that comes out of the planning policy department, and in some cases an SPG update may be more important than work on a master plan.
Yes, perhaps the Minister would be prepared to put resources into the policy and the planning guidance and master plans and adjust his budget, because as we speak, there are houses all over St Bellard's Bay being knocked down and reconstituted. Will he consider speeding up the plan of putting in planning guidance and master plans and so on?
Certainly, I'm happy to assure the Senator that I will look at how I might reprioritise that work within my department. But I can only say again that as important matters come to light, we have to address them. Recently, we've been told by one of our inspectors that our parking standards are not good enough, and that's quite clear that there's work there that has to be done. That's been raised up the agenda again. But certainly, I'll look at the priorities.
Deputy Gruel.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister not agree that with relatively little money, urban areas could be improved? Street furniture, tree-lined avenues, open spaces, because there are many areas like Five Oaks, Georgetown, and as I say, urban areas that could be improved with relatively little money or resources from his department. Could he not see to it to sort of comply with the island plan in some regard, and areas could be improved like that?
Certainly I agree, sir, that relatively small amounts of money can make vast differences to areas. The future St Helier project is St Helier not a parish, St Helier a town, and it encompasses areas like Five Oaks, Georgetown, as far out as First Tower, and I can assure the Deputy that as money becomes available to the future St Helier project, we will look not only at the regeneration of the heart of St Helier, but at other areas outside where we can make them more pleasant and interesting for people to be.
Would it not make sense to be working with the parishes now so they can have some input rather than just sort of be part of the St Helier sprawl? Once you've done St Helier, you then get on to the outlying areas. The constables of the parishes and parish representatives could be working on ideas for his department now.
Well, certainly, sir, if any member of the Assembly wants to come and speak to me about how their particular constituency might be improved, I'm happy to see them and happy to help them where possible. I work as close as I can with the Minister for Infrastructure, and I know that he's had a number of village schemes over the years which have been hugely successful in trying to green up areas and make them more pleasant, and I welcome any initiatives by deputies or constables, senators, that can improve the island.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And given that over the next few years, given the priorities that the Minister has outlined, the fact that 2018-19 will be seeing the development of a new island plan, as next one expires in 2021, given that context, is it not fair to say that despite the promises of what might go into St Helier and the outlying areas, the fact of the matter is St Saviour will remain a poor relation from this government and the States Assembly, and simply will not be receiving the type of support that the Minister has indicated, and that simply this master plan will not be produced during the lifetime of this plan.
So it's disappointing that the Deputy hasn't raised this issue with me. I've been Minister nearly 2 years now. If he feels strongly about making St Saviour's and parts of Five Oaks more heavily safeguarded, he could quite easily have raised that with me. But what I will say to him is this. I have said to officers at my department more than once in the 2 years that I have been Minister that there's fields in the Five Oaks area that I will be looking to put additional safeguards on in the next island plan. I look at the Senator for St Bullards. There's some fields in St Bullards as well. Indeed, I drive around the island and think to myself as I drive through St John's, there's another one there. There are fields all over this island that need to have additional safeguards placed on them because they are green open areas which the public have got used to enjoying, and they need to be safeguarded even more strongly than they are currently.
Come to questions to ministers without notice. The first period is for the Minister for Home Affairs, Deputy St John.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister, further to my written question, could the Minister advise whether there are checks on animals, or specifically dogs, coming into the island from the UK, and it's not only just from France?
Thank you, sir. Under the Pet Passport scheme, it is only from France that dogs are checked by officers of the Environment Department. But what I can say, sir, is that it is every owner's responsibility, and indeed we agreed in the recent amendment to the dogs law earlier this year, that it is the owner's responsibility to licence a dog through their parish hall, and also, as I mentioned it, to pay GST on importation of that dog if they bring it in from another place.
So, supplementary. Does the Minister not believe that in this day and age, and with moving forward, especially being in Jersey, that with regards to the specific legislation of Customs and Excise Import and Export Control Jersey Order 2006, that we should be determining dogs being brought into the island based on their behaviour and not just because they're a particular breed.
So this is an area of much debate and consideration. Indeed, the RSPCA have written a lengthy paper about breed-specific legislation. So it would be a matter for the Assembly to decide upon. At the moment, we operate under the legislation that we have in this island, which is appropriate and fit for purpose.
Deputy Mussel.
Thank you, sir. Following some correspondence received by an islander last Friday, looking at improvements or modernising various laws with regard to speed detection in the island, can the Minister confirm or otherwise whether she's had discussions with her counterpart at the Department of Infrastructure and whether they will be launching a review together in this legislation to look to modernise the law in order to allow for new technologies to be incorporated within speed detection laws?
Sir, thank you. This is an area of great interest, I believe, particularly in the parishes. And I think there might have been a vote in Grouville last night. It's tonight. I apologise. Tomorrow night on this issue. The Minister for Infrastructure and his department have been running a series of workshops over the past year, I believe, which I've attempted to attend, and my department and I are very happy to work with the Minister and the department.
Supplementary, sir. But specifically on the matter raised about incorporating new technologies into the laws, has that matter been specifically discussed? And if not, will the Minister give a commitment to have that conversation with the department? Thank you, sir.
So I believe it's a matter for the Minister for Infrastructure.
Deputy Kevin Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister update the Assembly on the status of the Operation Blast files, please?
Sir, I believe that those files were destroyed some time ago.
May I ask who authorised the destruction of the secret files on States members?
So this goes back way beyond my time, and I believe I have discussed this matter with the Deputy in the past and would be happy to do so offline if he wishes to once again.
Deputy Taddy.
So I was going to ask a different question, but I'm intrigued by that last response. Could the Minister explain, seek to find that information, bring it back to the House? It's not only of interest to members. I would suggest that there's an inherent public interest in the Operation Blast files, how they came about and then how they were subsequently destroyed. If we can't have faith in our public elected agents to act openly and freely without state surveillance and then know about what files were kept and then subsequently destroyed on whose authority, then it has massive questions to answer for democracy. So does the Minister not agree that it is a significant area of public interest? And will she make an undertaking to provide the information that the Deputy has sought, not just privately, but in the public domain?
So I'd be happy to do so. As I said, this is a historic case which occurred long before my time in the department.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Minister if she could explain the process used by the Police Complaints Authority in investigating complaints against the police and whether she believes that it is adequate? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As pointed out in the written question provided to the Deputy, sir, this process is outlined in the law, and I believe it's quite clear. As mentioned also in the written answer, we are looking at the process, the Police Complaints Authority, and whether there's any need to modernise its processes currently.
Supplementary. Thank you, sir. The Minister says, looking at it, is there any possibility of an independent police complaints authority being established so the complaints are not being investigated by the professional standards section of the police force, but by officers from outside or individuals from outside, So it's a truly independent investigation.
So the Police Complaints Authority are independent members of the public who carry out very important work on behalf of the public on a voluntary basis.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thanks, sir. I wonder if the Minister could update us on the future use of the current States Jersey Police site at Rouge Brilliant. And can she confirm that she's committed to working with the Parish St Helier, Property Holdings, and most importantly, the education to maximise the opportunity for the future use of the site? Thanks, sir.
Sir, it will be a point of great interest to me going forward as to the use of Rouge Brilliant, but without meaning to be difficult, I would have to refer this to the Minister for Infrastructure, who the use of our property portfolio sits within his brief. I'd be happy to work with that Minister, and we've already had some initial conversation.
However, would the Minister support the use of this site for community use, education use, and general well-being of the people that live in the area?
So I think that answer would be for the Minister for Infrastructure to answer.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. When the Minister has her review and updating of the complaints procedure, would she make sure that letters saying that there is the complaint has no veracity, will she make sure they're not sent out signed by the officer who the complaint was made against? I have actually seen these.
So this is not something that I have any knowledge of. As I said, the Police Complaints Authority is an independent body who work independently.
If she would make sure that letters saying there was nothing to do, the complaint wasn't valid, which is sent out by the Professional Standards Department and is signed by the officer against whom the complaint was made, will she just make sure that doesn't happen anymore?
I would be happy to discuss with the Chairman of the Police Complaints Authority.
Deputy Teddy.
Thank you. Could the Minister tell the Assembly how many emails or calls she has had in relation to the ongoing situation with Mr. Bronx? And will she be making a statement anytime soon on that issue?
Thank you, sir. I've had a great deal of communication from members of the public on this subject, and I'm very grateful to the majority of those members of the public who've been extremely polite and helpful in their correspondence. It's always good to engage. Just yesterday, actually, the Assistant Minister, a statement was sent out on behalf of the Assistant Minister to communicate that the department is considering this specific case because it is a matter of a decision for the Assistant Minister to take, as she has delegated responsibility for customs and immigration, and this decision now relies upon the Customs and Excise Law 1991. What I can say, sir, is that officers are working very hard to ensure that an answer is decided upon proper advice within a very expedient timeframe.
Supplementary, sir, if I may. Does the Minister accept that we are far from an ideal situation, not just in this case, but generally with the law, where we have a situation where a dog, which is probably not a dangerous dog, can be brought into the island as a puppy with nobody saying that's wrong or incorrect? Then it can be registered at a vet without anything being picked up to suggest that it's a dangerous dog. Then for the couple to take the dog away to France, only to find that when they try to come back to Jersey with the same dog, they're told, well, actually, we think that there might be a chance that this is a dangerous dog. But nonetheless, they're allowed to go home with their dog that's 4 to 5 years old. Of course, we know that there's no requirement to register a dog with the parish hall until 6 months of age, so it's not being picked up there. And in the meantime, you have effectively a loved family member, albeit of the canine variety, and the family and children put in this very difficult situation where they can't enjoy their human rights under Article 8 to the enjoyment of privacy of family life, let alone to do with enjoyment of their possessions. Not that I would call a dog a possession in the sentimental sense, but legally speaking, it may be. So it's a very complex area, and does the Minister think that actually, for the sake of not just this family, but for dog lovers all over the island, that some action needs to be taken to resolve this ever happening again?
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the wide-ranging question there. Firstly, I'll say as a dog owner myself and a parent, I fully understand the sensitivities around this issue. I don't, however, wish to be drawn on one specific case. The Deputy has helpfully asked a question about the state of our legislation in the island as it stands. So there are a couple of points to make, if I may. Firstly, that in my answer to the Deputy of St John earlier, I referred back to the dogs law that we amended recently, which it places the responsibility on the owner to licence the dog through the parish hall. And secondly, yes, that's right, so it's 6 months. So secondly, though, and that's allied to the point about the timing of that licensing, is that it's my understanding, sir, that it's not possible to positively identify some specific breeds of dogs until they reach at least 8 months of age. And so that also poses some perhaps level of difficulty in identifying certain breeds at specific times when they are young.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister aware that certainly on one occasion, and I suspect many others, the State of Jersey Police have not reported to the Police Complaints Authority that they have actually received a complaint? But they should have. It's recently come out in correspondence.
So that's not correspondence that I have any recollection of seeing, and perhaps I'd be grateful to the Deputy if he could supply me with further information so that I can make inquiries.
I shall provide the information.
Any further questions for the Minister of Home Affairs, Deputy St John?
Thank you, sir. Further to the seminar that was held with regards to domestic abuse, which I thank the Minister for inviting the Scrutiny Chair along to. It was an extremely good seminar. Could the Minister advise, at that seminar we were asked 3 specific things that we thought may assist in improving our system to support and protect individuals. What 3 things did the Minister take away with regards to what we could do to move forward?
Thank the Deputy for her questions, sir, and also for her attendance at what was a really inspiring conference. To state 3 specific things, it's quite a challenge actually because it was a wide-ranging conference. I think we are making great progress in this area, sir, particularly as the Assembly agreed earlier in the year to...
Well done, Minister. You've managed to talk it out.
Thank you, sir.
We now come to the second part of question time, which is for the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, the Minister was not present for the in-committee debate on higher education funding. However, I'm sure he's read every word that's written in the Hansard minutes. He will note from that the Education Department are very much of the view that the funding issue is one for the Treasury and not for their department. Could the Treasury Minister update us as to what, if anything, his department's done or pursued in regarding to future funding of higher education? Thank you.
Minister.
So yes, well, I would certainly agree with the Deputy in one department, and that one fact, and that is that funding issues are a matter for Treasury to find solutions to, working with ministers. And I can tell the Deputy that I've had a number of discussions with the Education Minister in regard of ways in which we can help to improve the situation for higher education. Indeed, the Deputy will be aware that in the current medium-term financial plan, that by 2019 an additional £2 million is being put into that area to try to assist. That's very much a catch-up in terms of funding, and we are having ongoing discussions in terms of what other options may be available, and also trying to understand the exact scale of the problem that we're seeking to try and deal with, bearing in mind the challenges the UK has seen itself trying to deal with such matters.
Sergeant Minister, could the Minister give some kind of timescale as to when he might come back to this Assembly with some proposals on proper funding going forward for the future of higher education?
I'm not entirely sure, sir, what the Deputy means by proper funding. Of course, we do, or were, I should say, investing £10 million in this area. That's been increased, as I've said, by a further £2 million per annum. So £12 million is being invested. Part of the discussions are around how that money can be most appropriately allocated to ensure that students wanting to go for further education do get the opportunity to do so. We are looking at some other options. To give a timescale at this stage is very difficult, but I'm happy to keep the Deputy updated. I know it's a matter that does interest him, and many others, of course.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Given the fact that AIS ship information systems are available, will the Minister be encouraging JT to seek compensation from the ship owners whose ship has broken the cables this morning?
So the Senator, of course, raises a very important point. Very disturbing news that we heard overnight about the loss of 3 cables to the UK. Fortunately, what this demonstrates is the resilience that is in place because, of course, there is a cable running to France, and that's where the traffic is being diverted to ensure minimum disruption to islanders and, in particular, island businesses by this damage. The point of the Senator about damage and liability, JT will, of course, be investigating all options. This matter is, of course, an insurable issue, but if there is damage that is attributable to a particular owner or organisation, then, of course, that will be pursued.
Supplementary, sir. Will JT also be looking at compensation for the other broadband suppliers?
Sir, I'm sure that JT will look at all areas that are relevant in terms of remediation for this particular incident. I do understand that not all cables were damaged, although there were a number of other cables that were impacted. Again, this incident only happened overnight and it's still being evaluated.
Deputy Muscle.
Thank you, sir. And again, looking at funding for tertiary education, can the Minister explain why a savings scheme for tertiary education wasn't introduced in his budget or being proposed in his oncoming budget, and whether that option is being explored further, given that the Minister said he's only looking at the extra £2 million that's been provided?
First of all, sir, I didn't say I was only looking at the additional £2 million. What the Council of Ministers sought to do was to address an immediate problem. We felt that to bring up to date the funding, taking into consideration the inflation increases, as of course this area of funding had previously been frozen, we thought it was appropriate to bring it up to date, and that was the purpose of the additional £2 million. In terms of other options that are being considered, such as saving schemes, that is a matter that's been discussed with the Education Minister, and we are still keeping open all options in ways in which we can assist. A savings solution is possibly one of those, not in the short term that would be beneficial, of course, because you have to start the programme, but it would be helpful perhaps in the longer term. But there are, like many of these issues, no straightforward answers, but it's still available for discussion, and we can report back to the Deputy on progress.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. What consideration has the Treasury Minister and what discussions has he held with the Social Security Minister over the possible introduction of workplace pensions in the island?
I have wide-ranging discussions with the Social Security Minister and other ministers. Issues such as the one raised by the Deputy is one that is interesting. It hasn't progressed further at this stage, but certainly is a matter that is on the table for further consideration in due course.
When did the Minister last talk to the Social Security Minister about this particular issue, and when does he have it scheduled to talk further about this issue, given that we are conducting a major review of pension provision?
So I'm happy to come back to the Deputy and give him an update. He's clearly after a timetable, which he's trying to eke out of me. I'm not going to give him any dates and times standing here today, but I am happy to come back to him and give him some degree of confidence in terms of timings.
I think, Minister, the question was when you last talked to the Social Security Minister about it.
As I said in my opening answer, sir, I talk to the Social Security Minister on a regular basis. In terms of this particular matter, off the top of my head, I think about a month or so ago.
Deputy Teddy.
Thanks, sir. Does the Treasury Minister accept that the living wage, i.e. being paid a wage with which you don't need to seek state assistance, is not just good for the self-esteem of the individual worker, but it's actually of benefit to the Treasury because it will save his department money in the long run? And if so, what plans does the Minister support that principle, I guess, is the first question.
I think the principle of a living wage is supported. We've seen it introduced to a degree in the UK, and indeed, as far as Jersey is concerned, the voluntary element of a living wage is perfectly reasonable. And I think that many companies have been encouraged to actually follow and pursue that issue. And in fact, most, I would suggest, probably do.
Does the Minister accept that, of course, voluntary only goes to a certain extent? It covers the people who wish to pay a living wage. They may already be paying a living wage, so it's easy to say that they're doing that voluntarily, and it provides no comfort for those, of course, who are not in that position. But more alarmingly, perhaps, is it not the case that the Jersey Conservative Party is falling behind its counterparts in the UK, who are starting to look remarkably progressive when faced with what's going on in Jersey?
So I didn't or wasn't aware there is a Jersey Conservative Party, so I'm not quite sure, tongue-in-cheek, what the Deputy is actually referring to. But standards change around the world. We've seen changes in the UK in terms of approach, and I think we need to make sure that we keep up to date. It is appropriate, clearly, that workers within the island are paid appropriate amounts of money to be able to live and survive. Of course, we do have to take into consideration that we have a social security system which is generous, and we have other benefits that are also supportive. So it's looking at the whole package as opposed to just looking at one specific area, I think is probably as relevant as anything else. Also, definitions of living wage are areas that have to be thought about quite carefully.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, sir. The one word I didn't hear from the Minister earlier on about student loans was about higher education with student loans. Could the Minister give us an update as to what, if any, investigations he's done into this regard? Student loans seem to be one of the most viable way forward. Could he update the Assembly on what, if any, discussions he had with this regard, particularly with the student loan company in the UK?
Sir, I think there are a number of issues with student loans. Lumbering students with significant loans over a period of time, depending, of course, how the loan system is actually structured, can be problematic, can cause quite a degree of difficulty in the medium to longer term for the individuals and their families. We've seen in the UK, of course, the cost of the loan scheme that was initially put in place. It's cost considerable amounts of money and has not necessarily delivered in the way that perhaps was intended initially. So I'm not convinced that a loan scheme as such is necessarily the way forward. Although there is some progress that's being made now, I think, with the student loan organisation in the UK compared to when it started. And I know that the Education Minister has and is cited in terms of where they are and will be updating me, I'm sure, in due course.
Supplementary, sir. Has the Minister thought to ask those that are most wanting this sort of funding this question to see whether they actually would like to see a loan system? So I suspect if he does, you might be surprised by the answer.
Sir, I think what you will get is a mixed view. You'll get some who think it's an excellent idea. Others will not commit themselves necessarily so freely that a loan system, it depends, of course, on the terms of the loan. That's the critical part. Some will feel it's a good idea, others won't. But, of course, it's got to be affordable as far as the island is concerned as well. So it's getting that right balance. If the Deputy is asking me if I've asked them, I haven't asked every individual person. It would be impossible to do so. But the Education Minister has a much clearer picture of need and want.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. Continuing the theme, does the Treasury and Resources Minister have a picture for what proportion of a workforce already has occupational pension schemes in place? And if not, will he do so over the coming time?
So, no, I don't have a statistic particularly to hand that I can give the Deputy, but certainly I can see if we can get some numbers for him. But he will be aware as I am about the level of statistical information in that area.
I'm not aware of any statistical information on that particular field. Does the Minister know more than me?
So that was the point I was making.
Does any member have any questions for the Treasury Minister where either the member or the Minister knows the answer? Then? Deputy Southern.
I shall do my best, sir. Will the Minister outline for members briefly where he is on the advent of property taxes in the near future? Because the last time I saw that, his predecessor was ripping up a chunk of so-called property tax policy in front of the electorate.
Yes, sir. In this modern age, if I could refer the Deputy to his inbox, he should yesterday have received the documentation with all that information in it. So he can read it to his leisure. But I can say in summary, sir, there is no radical change, which I've said previously, and I've updated members verbally with regard to that review that was undertaken some while ago.
Any further questions, Minister? Deputy Taddy?
So will the proposed new taxes include not just dilapidated property, but specifically dilapidated greenhouses, which are not only a blight on the landscape in Jersey, but also a shocking underuse of valuable agricultural land?
So I think that's more a question for the Environment Minister in some respects, but I take the point of where the Deputy is coming from. Should we seek to tax disused and dilapidated buildings? It's not a route that I would particularly want to go down, sir, but I do think we need to try and find ways to address matters. I agree with the Deputy insofar as there are some very disappointing sites with regard to dilapidated buildings and greenhouses in particular that we should seek to address.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I'm not going to give up on this one. The Minister has, in answers to my questions earlier about higher education funding, has said he won't put any more than £2 million into funding in grants forms. He doesn't think that loans are a very good idea. So what, if anything, is the Minister going to do in the short to medium term so that hard-working parents that want to send their kids to university and kids that want to go, what can they look forward to in terms of some assistance with enabling them to go on to higher education? Because we're not getting any answers. When is the Minister going to give us some?
Sorry, I don't think I said earlier on that £2 million was the only thing that was happening. I just simply said that we sought to address what we saw as an inequity, that allowance having been frozen some years ago. That was the right and appropriate action to have taken. In terms of finding large sums of additional money for a loan scheme, which the Deputy perfectly well knows because he's been in to discuss it at the Treasury, would cost many, many millions of pounds, tens or hundreds of million pounds in the longer term, potentially. And quite frankly, that is not affordable. So what I've simply said is that we do need to look at alternatives where we can seek to try and target as best we can the funds that we have available. We don't have the solution at the moment. We can see elsewhere in places like the UK where systems haven't worked and have been extraordinarily expensive as such, but that doesn't lead us to a position where we want to follow such an outcome.
Supplementary, sir? The Minister knows full well that there are alternatives to...
I'm sorry, Deputy, we are now past the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about another bond then?
Deputy Southern, Deputy Mezek, we were going to take questions 5 and 8 after questions to ministers without notice on the basis that the Assistant Chief Minister, Senator Joseph, was the one you particularly wanted to answer your questions, and it would seem sensible that as he is the one most briefed on it, that he does answer the questions rather than anybody else, although I'm sure that the Deputy Chief Minister is anxious to step into the fray if he is asked to do so. I would be minded to leave question time now and come back to your two questions at some convenient time later in the agenda, if that is convenient to you.
Yes, well, we're in your hands, I think, but I would far prefer the Assistant Minister in charge of the topic to answer the questions.
Yes.
And could I, at this point, make a complaint that, in fact, this must be the 6th or the 8th Tuesday when the Assistant Minister in charge of innovation has not been present in this assembly. And I remind the Chair that we have a prime duty to be here on a Tuesday. He's not here often.
You don't need to remind the Chair of that. The Chair's always here, but still. Thank you very much.
So could I suggest an idea for future reference which might be helpful, is that we could replace the seat where Senator Oser sits with a TV screen, and then he could beam himself into the Assembly to face a grilling from anywhere on the planet without necessarily even needing to come back to Jersey.
Thank you, Deputy. Very well, there's nothing under J or K, and we now come to statements to public business. The first item is P94, Ministerial Government Referendum. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
Sorry, sir.
Before the greffier reads that out, I wonder if I might ask for the indulgence of the Assembly. I have a medical appointment at 2:30, and looking at the way in which the order paper is structured at the moment, it seems to me possible that Deputy Martin's proposition might go on until close to the lunch hour. And I have asked her whether she might be willing to allow me to take the draft United Nations Financial Sanctions Jersey law before the Ministerial Government referendum proposition. She has very kindly agreed to allow me to do that, subject, of course, to the will of the Assembly. And I'm not sure the greffier may like to assist, but the note on the order paper suggests that I also need the approval of the Assembly to abridge.
No, you don't.
I don't? Right. Well, I've merely asked whether I can take this matter before the...
Deputy Martin, you happy for P108 to be taken?
Yes, sir. Well, I was promised the Senator wasn't coming back.
Today, I mean today, sir. But yes, obviously it's he's not going to be here, so obviously I concede, and he can take this before me if everyone else is in agreement.
Members agree? Very well, then we take P108, the draft United Nations Financial Sanctions Jersey law, lodged by the Minister for External Relations. I ask the greffier to read the citation of the draft.
Draft United Nations Financial Sanctions Jersey Law 2000, a law to enable financial sanctions required by United Nations Security Council resolutions to be implemented in Jersey and for related purposes.
Minister.
So perhaps I can thank Deputy Martin very much for that, although I do hope to be back in the Assembly at some stage. I hope it's not as serious as all that. So members will be aware that sanctions are the new means by which the international community and indeed nation states impose or seek to impose their will upon other nation states who are transgressing in some way or another. It is a measure of enforcing international will which falls short of going to war. The purpose of this law is to mirror legislative provisions which are under consideration in the United Kingdom Parliament under the Policing and Crime Bill, and to close a gap between the making of financial sanctions by the United Nations and their implementation by the European Union. If sanctions are not implemented in very short order and asset freezing orders made, there is a risk that money will flee the jurisdiction and escape control. So the principal aim, therefore, of the law is to address three issues. The first, as I have mentioned, is to minimize the delay in implementing asset freezes mandated by the United Nations. And the law will, to that end, allow the Minister for External Relations to make an interim or a final designation to implement UN sanctions resolutions. We will come to the detail of that in due course, but the interim order would generally last no more than 30 days, and the final order no more than 12 months. The second
provision is to enable protection to be given to the human rights of persons affected by these orders, and to allow appeals to be made to the Royal Court by persons who are subject to designation orders. And the third purpose of the law is to reconcile an inconsistency between the sanctions which are contained in the Terrorist Asset Freezing Law 2011 and the European Union Legislation Implementation Law of 2014, this law, by increasing the penalties from 2 years to 7 years in the first two mentioned laws. I move the principles of the bill.
Principal seconded. Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the principles? All members in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Against? The principles are adopted. Deputy Bree, does your panel, in the absence of Deputy Lefondre, wish to scrutinise this legislation?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Minister, how do you wish to proceed?
So perhaps I can take the bill in parts and take first part 1, which is Articles 1 to 3. These are the interpretation articles setting out the meanings of various phrases used in the bill, in particular meaning of a UN financial sanctions resolution and a UN listed person, and also in Article 3 the meaning of a designated person. I move the articles, those three articles of the bill.
Seconded. Does any member wish to speak on these articles? Those in favour of adopting them kindly show. Those against, the articles are adopted.
So I move to part 2 and articles 4 to 6 of the bill, which gives the minister power by order to make asset freezing orders. An interim asset freezing order is made where the resolution appears to be a UN financial sanctions resolution, and accordingly that it appears that it will relate to one or more UN listed persons. Such an order will last for no more than 30 days and will contain a sunset provision to ensure that it does lapse after 30 days. Article 6 deals with a final asset freezing order. One would generally expect that within the period of 30 days the European Union would have made provision under its own rules and regulations for the designation of the person specified in the UN resolution. But if that had not happened, in order to allow for the order to continue in force, the minister has power to make a final asset freezing order, which, despite its name, lasts for no more than 12 months, again in the expectation that the European Union would by that time have enacted some provision to deal with the UN resolution. So I move Articles 4 to 6.
Seconded. Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak? Those members in favour of adopting Articles 4 to 6 kindly show. Those against, the articles are adopted. Minister.
I take part 3, so Articles 7 to 15, and these articles contain the meat of the different obligations which will be imposed on persons who are either financial services entities or indeed associated with them. And the Article 7 deals with the freezing of funds and economic resources. Article 8 making funds available to a designated person. Article 9 making funds available for the benefit of a designated person. Article 10 making economic resources available to a designated person. Article 11 making economic resources available for the benefit of a designated person. And then exceptions to those provisions which are set out in Article 12. I move, and Article 13. Article 13 gives power to the Minister to give a license to allow a designated person to act notwithstanding the prohibitions contained in the earlier articles. For example, where a bank might wish to receive a sum of money into the account, and a license can be given for that purpose. Article 14 contains a penal provision for circumventing prohibitions which have been imposed. Article 15 contains the reporting obligations of the financial institutions. I move those articles of the bill.
Seconded. Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on these articles? Those in favour of adopting them, kindly show. Those against, the articles are adopted.
So part 4, the remaining articles of the bill contains a number of miscellaneous provisions. Article 16 incorporates Articles 22 and 23 of the terrorist asset freezing law of 2011, Articles 22 and 23. Article 22 of the 2011 law deals with power to require information. Article 23 deals with the production of documents. Article 17 of the bill contains provisions relating to appeals to the Royal Court and empowers the court to make rules of court. Article 18 contains a number of different offences and also applies Articles 33 and 36 of the 2011 law to this law. Article 19 applies Article 38 of the 2011 law. Article 20 gives the states power to make regulations to amend a number of articles of the bill. And Article 21 is the usual order about transitional, consequential, incidental provisions. And those are set out in Article 22. And Article 22, 23, and 24. And Article 25, the citation and commencement article, allows the Minister to make an order to bring the law into effect so as to achieve the law coming into force at precisely the same time as the United Kingdom Act currently before Parliament will be brought into force. It's not certain at this stage exactly when that Act will come into effect, but it is expected that it will come into force sometime during the spring. I move those articles of the bill.
Seconded. Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on these articles? Those in favour of adopting them, kindly show. Those against, the articles are adopted. Do you move the bill in third reading?
Move the bill in third reading.
Seconded.
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? Those in favour of adopting the bill in third reading, kindly show. Those against, the bill is adopted in third reading. We now come back then to P94, Ministerial Government Referendum, lodged by Deputy Martin. Ask the greffier to read the proposition.
Sir, before the proposition is read, could it be read as amended by myself, please, if that's possible?
Read the proposition as amended. Thank you.
The States are asked to decide whether they have opinion A, to agree that a referendum under the Referendum Jersey Law 2002 should be held on the day of the 2018 general election with a single yes/no question, to ask voters whether they agree with the States Assembly should continue with a ministerial form of government. B, to request the Privileges and Procedures Committee to bring forward for approval the text of the referendum question, having received appropriate independent advice and undertaken consultation thereon, and the necessary Referendum Act to enable the referendum to take place.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just a few words. I did amend my own proposition and took out the actual question because it was pointed out to me that privileges and procedures, which I am on, are nearly completed the work of a commission for referendum. They will construct a question that is directed from this House. The Commission will never come up with questions unless we ask them to do that. I will say a bit more on the Commission when I get to the comments from the Council of Ministers. Why now, sir, have I decided that I think we should ask the public if they want to continue with this style of government? Well, I think we should have asked them in 2000, 2001, 3, 4 or 5 before we went down this road. But we had a Mori poll, sir. 1,000 people answered that Mori poll and it was very muddled. So I do want to know now what the public think. So I want it put to a referendum. That's the only way I see that we can get a direct answer from the public. So let's go back. When Clothier was first muted and we saw the report, it was quite a good report. And people thought, well, it's got some good parts in it. But Clothier himself said, do not cherry pick. So in 2000, sir, there was a small group set up and then 9 members added. There was a large steering group. And from that moment on, the steering group, and I'll read out what it said, sir, on it's an appendix to Machinery Government on P122 at point 71. It said, before examining the committee's proposal for a system of scrutiny, it is worth considering what is actually meant by the word scrutiny. Scrutiny Sorry, sir. I am reading out the wrong part. But I will read this part because it does say about scrutiny. For the purposes of scrutiny should be regarded as embracing 3 main activities, namely participation in the development of policy and the review of legislation and the examination of the performance of government. And all these scrutiny, all the scrutiny that was promised in the debate, in the review, to my mind, has not happened, sir. Unfortunately, we've set up a scrutiny system that is basically set up to fail. We, in scrutiny, are looking backwards all the time on policies that are made by the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers, who have many policy makers behind them, officers in their departments, we don't know the thinking, the thought process, what was asked of them, and that's where scrutiny starts. And sometimes when it's confidential or policy in the making, scrutiny is then denied, absolutely denied, that they should have these papers. When the steering group was formed, sir, they sat down and they decided at the first meeting on the 8th of May 2001, there were 2 main areas. out of all of the clothier, sir, 2 main areas, and it was ministerial government and scrutiny. And then they were off, sir. They were running. They weren't looking at the reform of government. They weren't looking at anything else. They come back, and if you turn to my Appendix 2, sir, members, page 16, where they look at an electoral officer, there should be a central register. You're agreed. Polling stations, what these things they could agree on was a polling stations remain open from early morning till late evening. Agreed. 1 general election day for all states members for 12 parishes. That wasn't agreed. There's a page on why and why not. The role of senator should be abolished. 6. Every candidate should produce a policy statement. Agreed. Again, 7. The role of senator. Another paragraph, sir, of they can't make up their mind. This is the steering group that reported back to the states who couldn't make up their mind on fundamental issues. I mean, if you brought this as an essay in your, to put something forward, it wouldn't pass. It shouldn't have passed then. Constables to be ex officio. Again, no decision. But then later on, they say the committee of constables, they don't answer the question because they needed the constables to vote with them. But then on 9, they say the constables should consider whether the parish's committee should be consulted whenever the parish is particularly affected. Basically, put the constables out, but keep them in if they want to come in, and then if there's something affecting their parish, they consult with the council. The committee de connoissance, sir. So we literally went along down this road on some very dubious recommendations from a massive steering group. There was originally 4 or 5, and they added 9 states members, all with differing views. And actually, I do remember in the debate, we were sold it, and I've looked, we didn't have Hansard, I've tried to find something on the tape. We were promised that scrutiny would be much more involved in policy making, and we now know this is not the case. So people are saying to me, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to support that because, well, what are you offering the people? Deputy, what are you offering? And people have put words in my mouth, sir. There's nothing in my proposition that says go back to committee. There's nothing except to find out what the people think of the way we're doing things today. They know they still elect people the same way. They elect people, sometimes with hundreds of votes, sometimes a senator with thousands of votes. They think they're going to make a difference, sir, when they get in here. But they're not in the chosen 10 now, and they have no say, literally no say. So when they go back to their constituents and say, well, I'm not in there, I'm not even an assistant minister for that department, I find out things on the grapevine. I find out now that the policy has been made. Again, I go back to what were the alternatives, because we used to have them. We don't have any alternatives. We are given a fait accompli by the minister, sometimes in just a ministerial decision, sir, and you don't think the public understand this. I'm sure they do understand it. We have some extremely fantastic talent in this house, and it's sidelined, absolutely sidelined. It's, as I say, I think scrutiny, what scrutiny does is, within its terms of reference, is great. But again, sir, I say it's always looking backwards. And you can't be as good and effective if you're looking back and you produce evidence, like the Deputy of St Mary, did. And just to take this one example, on the scrutiny panel for zero contract hours, he produced the evidence. He interviewed hundreds of people, companies, and the minister says there's no evidence. So why would you keep navel gazing back at the minister's decision when the minister can just say, no, sorry, there's no evidence? So This is where we are with the public out there. The Council of Ministers, sir, the comments. Well, they weren't expected, were they? I really have to laugh, sir. They don't like my question. It could be yes or no, although I took the question out. But Senator Routier, Senator Osef, Senator McLean, Senator Gore, Senator Farnham, Senator Balish, Deputy Green and Deputy of St Martin's are all now on the Council of Ministers who, the same people in 2014, voted for Deputy Green, and it was written in the question, do you want the constable to stay in the States? Yes or no? They all voted for it, sir. All voted for the yes or no question. Today, the same ministers are saying, yes or no question, bit leading. Well, what do you want me to ask? Oh, maybe the moon will come out tomorrow. I don't know, sir. It's absolutely beggars belief. And, oh, I really love this one, sir. Paragraph 7. Now, they are absolutely supportive of ministerial government. They are 100% behind it. So in paragraph 7, they say it will bring considerable cost and it will require considerable energy at times at all levels of government over a number of years. This was the experience from the move from committee system to ministerial. So in their own words, they think they are going to lose. You put it to them, and we are going to spend thousands of pounds and time moving back to something or inventing something new. Why would you put that in? Today is not the day, sir, to have the debate on what comes next, to what it might be. Today is the day when you absolutely show the respect to the people of Jersey that should have been shown 16 years ago, and it's gone on and on. We've cherry-picked this, we've amended that. We shouldn't, if we have 2 types of members in their own steering group or 3 types of members, we shouldn't have a single-day election, but we have. So we have mucked around. We've now got collective responsibility. Also with assistant ministers, we have collective responsibility. I really don't understand, sir, why they do not want to ask the people. This isn't our government. This is their government. This isn't our assembly. This is their assembly. They literally want a say in this. I really don't understand. I mean, over the weeks, yes, we've had some really good comments. I mean, we had a great article in the JEP by the editor, and he's literally saying what I'm saying. People are fed up. In Deputy Green's amendment and it was on the constable, he's saying he's antidotal evidence. Some people say they want the constable, some people don't. And in his own words, he says, so what I want to do is put it to the public. And I want to ask him, and the deputy, now senator, is nodding. And that's what I want to do, sir. I want to ask the public. And I can't see any reason, it's not that so straightforward, that the public is not going to be asked. Because literally today, it will be, as I say, it will be something the public will want to know in 18 months' time. Either you support this and then you will have what the commission, the referendum commission will be set up to do, is to make sure you've got the right teams, make sure nobody's spending hundreds of thousands. They will make sure the question is right. But they, as I said, sir, at the beginning, they will not ever decide what the question will be to be put to the public. They will go by direction. So I've had phone calls. We've had today an ex-States member who, like myself, was never sort of enamoured with going down the full Council of Ministers, ministerial way forward. And he, like me, was always told, oh, that'll happen tomorrow, jam tomorrow, we'll put the meat on the bone tomorrow. But it's getting worse. It really is so bad now that I just think the people have got to be asked. I mean, I have to laugh. There was, and I'm not going to hold it up, I don't know if you can see on the screen. He was on Clothier, and on the 23rd of September this year, just after I lodged my proposition. He says the problem with politics in Jersey is there's not enough giants. There's not the giants that they had that solved all the problems after the war in the 40s, 50s and 60s with social security, health, housing. Where are the giants, he says? And I laugh. It says, by comparison, today's generation of states members, with few exceptions, are midgets. Midgets, sir. But he is then saying we haven't got enough giants, and 2 weeks later, on the 4th of October, oh no, committee system can't work. It never worked, it won't work, and it didn't work. Except when you had the giants working, sir. And they did all the things, they laid all the foundation for what we have today. Social security, the hospital, the health system, everything. These people worked in that system. I'm not saying that would be the best system. My system, sir, would have been the Mike Viber amendment, which was slowly might have got to where we are today, and it wouldn't have cost. And let me go back to the comments, cost, sir. Has anybody ever costed the price of ministerial government? The many, many more policymakers in each department, the more chief officers or executive officers who serve these ministers, their PAs. No one's ever costed this. This didn't happen under committee. Hundreds of thousands of pounds pumped into the ministerial system to give them power. And it's all about the power that sits behind the throne, or under the throne, sir. And these people, these people have a lot of influence. Do you want these civil servants, these policymakers, these chief officers deciding the government of tomorrow? Or do you really trust the people who elect you that you'll be going to in 18 months' time saying, vote for me again, please? But I don't want your opinion on the way we run you. I don't want your opinion on the way ministerial government works. But vote for me. Because I'm a good chap, or I'm a great person, and I'll do what you say. I've just explained, sir, you can't. Under this system, you cannot say that to your electorate. Unless you're in there. Unless you're in that close-knit 10 with the little, I would say midgets or minions, assistants that give good assistance, sir, and are collective to their department now, and any policy that overruns. And if you don't tell me social security, health, and sometimes even education don't gel together, so you've got them 6 assistants that are going to vote all the time with the council. Where did the public vote for this? Where did they say, this deputy to the left of me, or that deputy to the right of me has got more power in that government than this one? They never did. They were never asked, sir. I think it's straightforward. I think dismiss. You cannot rely on the comments from the council because they all are hypocritical. They all voted for the yes-no question only 2 years ago, and they were quite happy to do it. And the same 10 have written these comments today, sir, which don't stand up. They don't stack up, and they have utterly no respect for what the public out there think. Put it to the people, and if you're so confident that you're going to win, you will have your yes campaigners, you will have your no campaigners. That's where the debate starts. Because as I said, sir, whatever way you look at it, it will be an election issue. Because I will certainly make it one. If you do not vote today, when I go round knocking, sir, I'll have the list of people who said no to you. You, Joe Public, you don't have a decision in your government. I rest my case, sir. I think I've kept it quite short. And I look forward to the comments. Thank you, sir.
Proposition seconded. Yes, sir. The member wishes to speak. Senator Farman.
I would imagine, sir, that we all believe in popular sovereignty, which is, as I'm sure members will know, the principle that there is no higher authority than the will of the people, which is, of course, the basis of the whole concept of democracy. Democracy is well practiced here in Jersey, in this very chamber, by elected members with differing political views, representing all walks of our society. Generally speaking, sir, we are all elected by constituencies made up of either a district, a parish, or by an island-wide mandate. And this, in my opinion, means we have a most representative parliament, if you'll excuse that description of our assembly, sir, in this instance. And with 49 members for a population of about 100,000 people, that's roughly one politician for every 2,000 people. And that is strong voter influence. We are all very approachable and we are all influenced by the electorate on a daily basis. And whilst I do not agree with every decision this Assembly makes, I believe, on balance, more often than not, it gets it right, even when it goes against the Council of Ministers. A referendum, as we all know, is a vote in which the electorate can express a view on a particular issue or subject. And whilst proponents of referendums would argue that they can be used to check the power of elected assemblies and promote wider political participation, I believe that the disadvantages are worthy of careful consideration. For example, referendums allow politicians to manipulate the political agenda and absolve themselves of responsibility for making difficult decisions. A familiar pattern, sir, with the issues relating to electoral reform, the makeup of this Assembly, the machinery of government, and this Assembly. They leave political decisions to the public, sir, who often, and I mean this respectfully, have the least information to make a decision and are most susceptible to the media and other influences. They provide at best only a snapshot of public opinion at one point in time. They tend to simplify often complex political issues by reducing them to questions that have a yes or no answer. And in response to Deputies Martin's allegations allegations, they were facts, sir. Yes, we did vote that way, I think the majority of the Council of Ministers. But with respect, the question of whether the constables should remain in the States is clearly one that could be answered quite properly with a yes or no, because if it's yes, they stay. If it's no, they leave. There is a solution for both answers. And I'll come on to that just in a little bit, more onto that in a little bit, sir. And the whole topic of our machinery of government is a complex issue, and one that has evolved upon expert advice in the past and mature political debate from a consensual style of government, i.e. the committee system, to the more executive style of government that we use today in a ministerial system. And having worked in both, sir, I know which one I prefer, but being mindful that the debate today is about whether we hold a referendum relating to the continuation of a ministerial form of government, and is not a debate about the committee system versus ministerial government, I hope I have kept and will keep the rest of my speech appropriate in both duration and focus, and would hope other members do the same, so otherwise this is going to be a very long debate. Now, there are a number of shortcomings with the proposition, and I refer members to the comments of the Council of Ministers, and I know other ministers will speak in more detail about those. But specifically the fact that this proposition proposes a referendum on whether we abolish what we have without any clear proposal as to what will replace it. And that was the main difference between this question and the question on the constables. They're completely unrelated in terms of referendum question. It's also worth remembering, sir, that we do not have a very good track record with referendums. And without the appropriate legislation to carefully guide the process, we run the risk of not being able to deliver the views expressed by the public, which would almost certainly lead to a calamitous loss of confidence in this Assembly. Finally, sir, I do believe we can have a more inclusive style of government under the current ministerial system. And I understand work is underway exploring a number of options on how this might be delivered. And with that in mind, sir, I am firmly of the opinion that a referendum is not the answer, and I respectfully ask members to vote against the proposition. Thank you.
Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I respect and admire Deputy Martin very much, and in virtually any other situation she'd be able to count on my support for the propositions she brings, as she has when she's brought forward other propositions on better ways to hold the executive to account, or when she's brought forward propositions on protecting support for disabled people in our community. But I can't support this proposition today because I think it offers false hope to those who want to see something better for Jersey, and will ultimately lead to disappointment for the thousands of islanders who are being let down so badly by the appalling performance of the current Council of Ministers. And I think it harks back to a bygone age, which was actually far worse than people are prepared to admit as they look back with rose-tinted glasses. The underlying point that this proposition is trying to recognise, though, is absolutely right, and that is that our government is failing so many people in our community, and that those who have presided over this absolute mess of a government and the ones which preceded it have no clue whatsoever on how to fix our democracy and move towards a situation where the public can actually have faith in the people who sit in this chamber. And I think the proposition does provide a partially correct diagnosis that there is a problem, but I think that Deputy Martin is prescribing the wrong solution to it. And the underlying issue about how our political system is failing to deliver for islanders is, and Deputy Martin said this and she's right, it is a problem which is not going to go away anytime soon. And in the senatorial by-election this summer, the question of the committee system versus the ministerial system came up a lot. And it came from people from all sides of the political spectrum, people who felt disillusioned at the performance of the Council of Ministers, even if they were people who were ideologically sympathetic to what many of those ministers stand for. And so you would have to have been living in the Minkies for the past 10 years to fail to see that our political system is a complete and utter shambles. And that's leaving the broken voting system to one side for now. We have a government which ultimately represents the interests of the rich and powerful and is utterly clueless about how the majority of ordinary islanders actually live their lives and the struggles that many of them face. And the public have no faith in us whatsoever. All the opinion polling done shows that islanders don't trust politicians. They think we're in it for ourselves and that we don't care about ordinary islanders. The annual social survey in 2014 showed that 75% of the public have no faith in the states, and the most recent Change.je opinion poll had 82% of the public saying that we're going in the wrong direction. And when we go out knocking on doors at election time, asking for people to come out and vote for us, we're faced with the same statements time and time again. Why should I bother voting? It won't make a difference. They're all the same. They're not interested in what the public actually want, and they're not interested in listening to the people of Jersey. And who can actually blame people for thinking this way when we have Council of Ministers who perform so poorly and act completely oblivious to their own failings? And those failings are numerous. Firstly, they have no control whatsoever on population growth, with their own targets being breached 4 times the limits that they set themselves. They've completely ignored public opinion and scrutiny over the building of the offices on the Esplanade, which no one wants and which is risking tens of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money to deliver. They lose hundreds of thousands of pounds on films which never happen and on companies which disappear off the face of the planet. They let their civil servants fly business class around the world on jollies and don't have the guts to discipline them when it's clear that they've behaved wrongly. They waste millions of pounds on consultants because nobody's prepared to take ownership over decisions and take the blame when things go wrong. They've made no effort to find proper solutions to student funding. They spend £5 million finding out that the best place for the hospital is where it currently is. They're looking for whatever excuses they can to raise taxes despite promising they wouldn't. Their response to the catastrophe that is the Condor liberation has been woeful and embarrassing. And they seem to think that you can fix the seaweed problem on St Albans Bay by dumping it back down the bay, seemingly oblivious to the fact that there's something called the tide, which simply brings it back up again. And they can't even get it right first time on an ice skating rink. But worst of all, worse than any of these, is that not only have they presided over growing income inequality, a drop in the standard of living for thousands of islanders, and the rise of food banks. But they've actually made it worse by pushing through £10 million of cuts to support we provide for pensioners and disabled people, some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in our community, with no second thought as to the impact it will have on these people's lives, and whilst they go out of their way to protect the wealthiest people in Jersey. They tell us that actually the island is doing brilliantly, and they genuinely believe it because they are so out of touch with reality. And that is why the public have so much contempt for politicians. And the shake-up that this democracy needs is for the people of Jersey to do what the people of Alderney did last weekend and go out to vote and throw out the people who are letting them down so badly. And how we deal with the problem we have in our democracy is by embracing the electoral process, by voting for the right candidates. The problem, I don't believe, actually is the ministerial system. The problem is the ministers. It's the individuals who hold this office, because the system, ministerial government, is actually a system which works incredibly well in many small jurisdictions across the planet, where ministers are elected on proper manifesto platforms which they can take off from the moment they're elected and deliver on what they promise the public. And if they fail, the public kick them out and they give somebody else a shot instead. And one example that I've spoken about several times before in this assembly is Gibraltar. They're the size of St Helier. They have ministerial government, but they get far better government outcomes than we do, for better value for money, and they're able to take on grander schemes than us in shorter periods of time because their leading politicians are far more competent than the ones we have in Jersey. And this proposed referendum, whilst it asks if we want to continue on with ministerial government, it doesn't give any indication of what the alternative is. And I wonder, the results of that referendum will be utterly useless to us. If the public vote to keep ministerial government, there will be some who will use that as an agenda to say that their performance in the Council of Ministers has been brilliant, the public love them, and we can carry on business as usual, or the public vote against it, and then we spend 4 years being governed by a system which has just been rejected, and have to have what I presume will be an absolute mess of a debate trying to decide what we move to instead. And I think that, as I mentioned earlier, there are people who look back at the previous system and who will stand up in this referendum campaign and say we should go back to that committee system. They'll even talk about Guernsey and say, oh, well, see, Guernsey's gone to a committee system and they're doing so brilliantly. And the two problems with that is, one, Guernsey's not doing brilliantly. Their politicians are held in just as much contempt as the ones in Jersey are. They are not some magical beacon of democracy in the Channel Islands. And also, their particular version of committee government has actually only been in place for a few months, so we can't even tell if it's going to deliver for the people of Guernsey. But I've got a lot of friends in Guernsey, and they have the same disillusionment with the government system in Guernsey. And I tell you, it's nothing to do with committee system or ministerial system or electoral system. For them, it's that they're fed up of voting for people who, when they get elected, don't actually go ahead and implement policies that they promised the electorate they'd get on with. They just become part of the club. And that's the problem, is that a committee system is not a government. It's a club. You elect people who then sit on their committees and then form policy. And the public have no direct say in giving a mandate to policy. They just have a say in giving a mandate to people who then go on and form policy. That is why people won't go out to vote in a system like that, because their vote will feel worthless. You vote for one person who, yep, they seemed nice on the doorstep, they get elected, and then they just go and do whatever, and your vote has no impact whatsoever in the government outcomes you get. That sort of system will cause just as much, if not more, disillusionment in our political system than the current system. And I've already said that our current system certainly has a lot of work that needs to be done to it to make it work properly. But I think the way that that will be achieved is not by doing what I think this proposition does, which is that it I think falls short of what the ambition of those of us who have no ideological sympathy with the Council of Ministers should be aspiring to. The ambition of people in our society who have progressive views and who are opposed to what the Council of Ministers stand for on philosophical grounds should not be simply trying to manipulate a government system so that we can try to mitigate what these people do, because these people will always be in power. Our ambition should be far greater than that. Our ambition should be to kick these people out and replace them. The ambition of people on the progressive side of politics should be to take power so you can use that power to transform our society and provide good public services for the people who depend on having progressives in government. Those are the squeezed middle, they're the poor, they're the vulnerable, they're the people who are completely let down by this Council of Ministers, which is ideologically attached to the idea that if you look out for the wealthy, everything else will simply fall into place there. And to create a government system to try and mitigate what they can do is the wrong way to go about it. We should be having a proper cabinet-style government with party politics where the public have the opportunity to kick out a government they don't like, replace it with a new one, and when any government of any stripe or any colour takes office, they are able to stand with their election manifesto and turn it into a blueprint. It shouldn't just be a CV. It should be a potential blueprint for government that when you're elected, you get on with and you implement. And that is how we'll be able to save millions of pounds that's spent on consultations and consultants that doesn't mean anything. That is how we'll be able to have internal processes built into the civil service so that they've got contingency plans for when a Council of Ministers loses an election and is replaced by a new one, so that they won't get complacent. They won't have this poisonous culture that currently exists where they're able to get away with a lot more than what they would be allowed to in any other democratic jurisdiction. And so I think that rather than accepting this proposition to have a referendum in May 2018 on ministerial government, we should reject this proposition and we should have a proper referendum on election day, and that should be a referendum on the performance of the Gorst and Ossoff government, and we should use that election to cast a verdict, kick them out, and get people in who actually know what they're doing, and that is what will restore faith in politics in Jersey, not this proposition, and on that basis I will not be supporting it.
Call on the Constable St Martin.
Thank you, sir. When I first read the proposition, I believe the Deputy was actually seeking to return to a committee-style government. Many of us in this Assembly today have never worked under a committee-style government, so it's difficult for us to know if more was achieved, if it worked better than what we have now. However, the more I read the proposition, it really is just one of asking the electorate what they think of ministerial government, and to do this by way of another referendum. Because we had a good, I put questionable, record on referendums. I think we've had 3 in total, some alluded to already. The first being probably wasn't seen at the time, but was really a test referendum to see on British summertime, I think, Greenwich Mean Time. The second referendum was rejected by this Assembly, and of course an own goal. And the third endorsed the role of the Connétables in this Assembly and created an even greater change for those trying to change something that they thought was better. But there was a clear result given. And there was a question, or a mention earlier this morning about the yes-no, and that yes-no question on the third referendum was put purposely because of the second referendum question that caused so much trouble. The Deputy has indeed worked under a committee-style government as well as ministerial, so is obviously aware of each and which one she feels more was achieved. I'm not sure why she'd want to bring a proposition forward now, but suspect it's much, and I think even from her speech this morning, it's much out of frustration on her part, believing that more could be achieved by other means, and with more involvement from all members, and not, in her view, and maybe she's right, merely lip service from the Council of Ministers. And probably many people have told her too that they feel frustrated at how government is being run. And I can tell the Deputy that there are many, many times, and with increasing frequency, that I too become totally frustrated, both in this Assembly and in the parish. Parishioners have told me they're frustrated how things are going. But I'm sure the question in another referendum, without an answer on how to deal with that, is the answer to today. And the answer will probably be a no vote. That the electorate should not continue, they'd want not to continue with ministerial government. I think that's what's going to happen. And if that is the result, what do we do next? So I'm not comfortable with referendums in the first place. When do you hold them? Why do you hold them when we've been elected members to make decisions? What subjects are worthy of a referendum? The role of the bailiff in the States Assembly. Should we reduce the number of senators? We did that. We didn't ask them. Should there be a living wage on the island? That we're going to be speaking about later today or tomorrow. Should the speed limit be through 30 miles an hour throughout the island? Let's ask the public. Referendum. Should the island seek independence? And there's many, many more. Where do we stop? Deputy Martin starts her report by stating she believes the public have strong views about the effectiveness of ministerial government and its accountability to them. Yes, there may be some. It should be all, but hard as it may feel to say this, I really believe that the majority are not actually bothered. And those that are not bothered about ministerial government, they're worried about government full stop. What the public really want. The public want things to happen. They want to see decisions made promptly and those decisions kept. They don't want to see money wasted. They actually want to see money saved, and we don't have a good track record there. They want to see states members work hard. And for the fear of criticism, states members do work hard. Every states member in this assembly works hard. I see it, the public mightn't see it, but they do. Isn't that what the public actually want? There will, of course, be others who want this government to do things that are not actually possible. And we'll always have those. Some people will never be pleased. And if the Deputy wants a ministerial's decision to cease, then I don't think a referendum question about ministerial form of government is the answer. And I appreciate her amendment tries to address the issue. Now, I have to say, sir, that I was disappointed with the comments paper from the Council of Ministers. Even as a perceived loyalist of the Council of Ministers, we know the 4 objectives. We've heard them many times in the last few years. No need to tell us again. What really drew my attention was the government speak low down in the comments. And I'll read it, sir. However, with care and attention, and while difficult, positive, constructive and considered change is possible. This is what the Council of Ministers would like to see, including promoting engagement and the inclusiveness in the development of strategic and financial policies, and in doing so, considering a wide range of options. It's a line straight out of Yes Minister, isn't it? Like Deputy Martin's proposition, again, no answer as to how we achieve things, or how we are achieving it. So it's interesting to note that, maybe not for the chairman of PPC, once again, just 4 weeks after we had another proposition on polling cards and polling stations, we have yet another member of PPC bringing propositions to this assembly. Now, bringing a proposition to this assembly, whilst the committee on which she actually sits and is a member are about to bring forward legislation in relation to referendums and a referendum commission. And whilst accepting any member can bring a proposition before, it is PPC themselves who are bringing forward the legislation in the next few months, building on the previous recommendations of R80 in 2014. I read that again at the weekend, and a very informative piece of work it is, sir. The Deputy has, of course, realised this and submitted an amendment to her own proposition to cater for the wording of the question. Just finally, sir, I'm sure the Deputy has brought the proposition because she thinks it could be done differently, be done better, even if she reverts to what we had before, Clothier. But of course, in the broadest sense, her proposition today really is a vote of no confidence. I see it as a vote of no confidence in the Council of Ministers, and that's the way she's brought it today. I don't know if that's... I just had that feeling when I read it, sir. Serious stuff, and therefore I'm unable to support it. And what she hasn't been able to do is to offer that alternative, and even the Deputy accepts that herself. But maybe another Clothier report on the composition of government, and I really rest my case. More expensive. I cannot support the proposition. Thank you.
Senator Balash.
So the frustration of Deputy Martin is obvious. And I think, to be truthful, that many members of this Assembly share her frustration. It's just that I think the solutions that members would offer are not the same. The solution that Deputy Martin offers to remove her frustration would, I'm sure, make matters infinitely worse. In fact, what she recommends as a solution is not very clear. Her report asks for a referendum on whether Jersey should continue with ministerial government. But what if the answer to that question is no? What is the deputy putting in place of ministerial government? Does she want to go back to the committee system? She suggested that in her speech, but it's not at all clear from her report that that is actually what she wants to do. She certainly doesn't say so in her report. On the contrary, she includes a very large section from the report of the late Deputy Mike Vibert, which was relating to an amendment that he put forward in 2001. But his amendment, rejected at that time, sought to introduce a combined committee ministerial system. Does the deputy want a combined ministerial committee system? She doesn't say so. What she does say is that, and I quote, it could be something else entirely, but she doesn't tell us what it's going to be. So the proposal is, in a nutshell, that the public should be asked if they want to abolish our current system of government, but we are not going to tell the public what we would propose to put in its place. That would be a recipe for chaos. And I'm sure the deputy does not want that. She refers in her report to the report of Sir Cecil Clothier, and I reread that report over the weekend. Although not all the recommendations of that panel have been adopted, it is surprising how many have in fact been accepted over the period of the last 15 years. I think that Clothier got it wrong in relation to the role of the bailiff, he got it wrong in relation to the role of the constables, and in a number of other ways too. But he did recommend that the Assembly should, if ministerial government were introduced, reduce its numbers substantially. And there we have so far failed. I was speaking at the end of last week, sir, at the British-Irish Council to members of the Manx delegation, and I learned from them that although they have a smaller assembly, every member who is a member of the House of Keys has a role in executive government if he wishes to have it. And everybody does have a role in executive government, save one, I understand. And they told me that that did not prevent members who were either who were what we would call assistant ministers, members of their departments, from serving on scrutiny panels. And indeed, they said that they thought that experience of serving in government actually enhanced the scrutiny process. They became better scrutineers. Our absurd rule, which limits the number of ministers and assistant ministers, prevents us from involving more members in executive government. So members cannot have it both ways. We can either be inclusive, as Deputy Martin wishes us to be, involve more members in the governmental process, or if we are not prepared to do that, which is our current system, then we are heading, as Deputy Mezek would have it, towards a party political system. Deputy Mezek treated us to a wonderful tirade about the deficiencies of ministers and their failings. But I think that what he was really telling us is that he would like to be the Chief Minister. The difficulty is that there are perhaps not too many people who would share that aspiration. He spoke about the Gibraltar and cracked up what was happening in Gibraltar. But Gibraltar has an assembly of 17 members. The Isle of Man has 24. How many do we have? And are we prepared to do anything about it? When it came before the Assembly on the last occasion, Deputy Mezek voted against and kept the numbers that we have. So I hope that members will reject this proposition, well intended as it might be. A referendum needs a clear binary yes-no choice between two different options which can be easily explained and easily understood. We don't know what our options are here, and I hope that members will not push into the lap of the public the solution to a question which they should not be asked to solve. We should not abrogate our own responsibility for sorting out the deficiencies of our current system.
Any other member wish to speak? Conor Hobson-John.
Thank you, sir. Many, many years ago, when I first started farming, before I was allowed to farm, I had to go and prove my qualification to the Committee of Agriculture. And I sat opposite the committee across a long table of 7 committee members, and at the end was the chief officer, one man. Just before being elected about 3-4 years ago, I again went to meet a minister. This time I sat across the table. The minister was opposite me, and there were 5 officers and 1 secretary taking minutes. I put my series of questions, and they were all answered by the officers. And apart from saying, "Hello, Chris," and "Goodbye, have a nice day," the minister actually said nothing. And this is how government has changed. Clothier was in some respects a very, very good report. But where he failed, and it was pointed out by the previous speaker, was to recognise Jersey's heritage and Jersey's closely guarded parochial system. The parishes are the constituents. And any form of amalgamating and changing parish boundaries to different constituencies, I believe, will be strongly opposed. At the same time, the public have spoken through the referendum to keep the constables and again to keep the parishes. One of the things Clothier made very clear was do not cherry pick. That is exactly what has happened. I think, sir, what we have is a problem that needs to be recognised before we can actually find a solution. In any private business, you've got a management structure and you've got the managers. You can have the best managers in the world, but if the structure in which they work isn't correct, they're ineffectual and the business will fail. Equally, you can have the finest structure, but if the managers themselves aren't any good, again, the business will fail. The advantage the private sector has is that they can change their structure to fit their managers to ensure the success of the business. We have had committee government, and we have had ministerial government. And I can remember people complaining about the committees in the past. In much the same way now, we have complaints about the ministerial government. We have a fixed management structure of ministerial government. I'm not going to comment whether that is right or wrong, but unfortunately, it's not working because the people in it are not performing. A classic example is the fact that almost every piece of legislation comes late. This morning, we were asked to take the draft United Nations financial sanctions early. The budget was lodged late. The hospital site was lodged late. And we've only just had the lodging of how the hospital is going to be financed. The comments papers from the Council of Ministers are usually circulated on the morning that we sit, and so those of us who have amendments or propositions don't have the time to read what the Council of Ministers have to say and therefore respond to them. There is also the issue that when we do get comments, you can't quite understand them. And I refer here to the Ministerial Government Referendum P94 2016 comments by the Council of Ministers. And I will read the first sentence. In recent months, a number of changes to the workings, our democracy and system of government have been proposed. What on earth is meant by that? Nobody's proofread this. Anybody, any child who would have proofread this would have said, Dad, there's something wrong with this. I honestly don't know what that means. And this is the evidence that we have that unfortunately it comes down to timeliness, to decision making, to leadership. Within the Council of Ministers, they do not have the necessary discipline, leadership, timeliness of decision making that is required. And we as an assembly keep getting a load of rubbish. And this is the example. And the example, the fact that so much information comes to us late, is all the evidence I need. The other issue we have is scrutiny. I've worked extremely hard, and I know on the various committee panels that I have worked on, my colleagues have worked extremely hard as well, only to be brushed aside by the ministers. Oh no, that's very interesting, well done. But if you read, I believe it was Clothier, he said scrutiny should assist in policy making. But if we ask, what are you doing? We are told, oh, this is policy under development. We can't tell you. That's what we're there for. And will you please, please consult scrutiny before you make a decision, and not just come to this assembly and say, this is our proposition, it's read out, the proposition is made, do scrutiny want to look at it? No, sir, it's too late. All right, let's move on to the next one. I find it difficult to support this proposition, but I'm going to, for the simple reason that the frustration amongst us, there are people in this assembly who are as frustrated as the general public outside. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid it's up to the Council of Ministers to sort themselves out. We've got to have leadership, timeliness, and effective government. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Tadier.
Thank you, sir. So there was a former member of this assembly, and I won't name him just in case the quote that I'm about to give was either off the record or for other reasons doesn't want to be attributed to him. but he used to say that Jersey is a one-party state masquerading as consensus politics. And I think that, in particular, that was in the context of the committee system, and whereby we would always say, oh, Jersey's great, there's no different sides, we all agree, we're all here in the best interests of Jersey, and essentially saying that in reality there's a one-party state which is led often by the top, whether that was by a committee, the chair of the policy and resources, or finance and economics as it was in the day, and now we've simply got a ministerial government. But we know who the equivalents are of that in the current system. And so this myth of consensus politics still lingers, though the reality, especially in the more complex and cosmopolitan Jersey, I think it has become less sustainable to keep that illusion going. Now, you've got to question to what extent there's a systemic problem here, and no doubt there is to some extent a way in which the current system can definitely be improved, and we'll talk about some of the ideas for that. But there's also a problem to do with the incumbents and the way that they treat ministerial government. And I think you have to be fair and say that ministerial government is relatively new. There hasn't necessarily been a blueprint of how it's done. The conventions haven't really arisen in the way that they might have over a long period of time with the previous system, or in other areas where there's long traditions of having ministerial systems along with an oppositional government. So we need to bear that in mind whilst criticising or critiquing the status quo. But it is extraordinary, isn't it, that time after time, and especially during this debate when we're potentially talking about changing the whole structure of government and putting that question to the public, that the leader of the government isn't even in the Assembly, and that another key proponent of his government is somewhere in the coffee room. I've just seen him come off a plane. And could we imagine a scenario, for example, in the House of Commons, when on a Wednesday the Prime Minister wasn't there, even though she knew that she has to face questions every Wednesday and that there'll be a barrage? The House wouldn't accept it over there, and the public and the media certainly wouldn't accept it. Yet in Jersey, we say, oh, that's fine, they must have something more pressing than being in the Assembly, which is their core function that we have elected them to do. The problem doesn't lie with the system or the public, it lays with us, because time and time again, we actually do not stand up for our own rights as an Assembly, and we let ourselves be walked over, even though, and it has to be said, in the Jersey context, we are in the majority. We've built a system of ministerial government deliberately with checks and balances. It's not something that we all asked for, but the checks and balances were put in place. There are 10 ministers, I think, if that's correct, with some assistant ministers, and even with the 11 ministers, and even with their assistant ministers, they are still technically in the minority. Now, we know there's an element of fiction around that, of course, because they've got a good starting position, and they only need to nobble a few backbenchers to get their policies through, but they can't always do that. And so we have an inbuilt position. Yet we seem to be crying, saying, oh, well, we don't think this is fair. We would like to be more included in government policy, and therefore we get to the position where I completely understand where Deputy Martin is coming from with some of the frustrations, and of course she's talking to parishioners, and particularly some of the elder generation who are the most active when it comes to engaging politically, certainly at the ballot box, and of course they will say, well, weren't things better in the past? Didn't it run a lot better in the past? So let's look at that, because I think that there is a logical fallacy which is being put out there, perhaps unintentionally, where we look back, and the fallacy is the one of cause and correlation. So people look back at the past and say, well, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, states members weren't paid, and we had all these very macho big giants, as they were called. They tended to be men. They were sometimes quite tall. They were sometimes very outspoken and boisterous, but goodness me, didn't they get things done, even against popular opinion in certain cases? But of course, that fails to recognise that actually the circumstances were quite different. We did have some political giants. It has to be said, but there was a different financial and economic climate at the time. Quite frankly, we had money coming out of our ears and it couldn't be spent quickly enough. Even the amount of follies that the states of the time used to try and spend money on things like a steam clock. The whole potato saga that I remember as a very young lad, the Beauport Potato Man was idolised in song form by the famous Jersey band, Beauport Potato Man. That happened during the committee system. That wasn't a ministerial failure. And there are no doubt other litanies that could be attributed to the committee system, as well as some very good hard work and normal day-to-day policy making and good provisions that were made in the past by people sitting around a table. And so you can't say that any plus side is due to ministerial system, or any negative consequence if you're on the other side is necessarily down to the ministerial system. I think that's just part of the territory. Government and assemblies sometimes get things right, they sometimes get things wrong, and you can't necessarily attribute that to the system. And I would put on record as well, remember, and I spoke to somebody who perhaps was on the government side saying, well, you know, in the past we had some great people there who actually set up the economic stability for the day, and you know, life was great, and pretty much to use those cliches. And I said, well, yeah, but remember that there was systemic child abuse that happened on their watch. I'm not saying that they knew about it, but for decades these things were going on, and for the remaining decades we've had to deal with the social consequences of that, and more recently the financial consequences of that as well. So, you know, let's put this in context. Again, that can't be attributed per se to the committee system, but it did happen under the committee system. Now, I think that there are some positive steps that we can take as an assembly to reclaim back our power, because what we clearly have here is a ministerial form of government which is increasingly very powerful. We see in particular the Chief Minister's Department becoming very powerful, gaining extra resources. Departments which were previously separate, like housing and other things, social policy, increasingly come under the auspices of the Chief Minister, and there's a concentration of power there, definitely. Absolutely, that's correct, and that is what's happening. At the same time, backbenchers find themselves impoverished when it comes to the resources that they have. Even in scrutiny, we find that perhaps scrutiny isn't even necessarily spending the budget that they have year upon year, let alone demanding more money and more resources. And then what provision is there for the individual backbencher who's perhaps been elected, like most of you in this assembly, sir, most members in this assembly have been elected as independents, or the three of us who have been elected as a party, we don't get any particular resources apart from the basic wage and some shared facilities. Now, this wouldn't be acceptable in other parliaments and other assemblies. They would actually demand the basic tools that we need to do our jobs. But it seems that once we're here, we remain humble, which is, of course, important. It's important to remain humble for and with the electorate. But certainly, we should be demanding that we have the wherewithal to do our jobs correctly. Now, that's certainly one thing which I think should be put forward. I've certainly learnt that in the last week, meeting parliamentarians from all around the world, and Deputy Wickenden, I'm sure, in the future might say the same thing, that even in small jurisdictions like Montserrat, which has 4,000 people and which has party politics, interestingly enough, goes to show that party politics isn't just for bigger countries. Small jurisdictions, smaller than Jersey, can and have done that very successfully. And they tend to be resourced generally much better than in little old Jersey, which is trying to punch above its weight, and which does punch above its weight in so many ways on the world stage. But we seem to accept a raw deal from the backbenchers. So that's the first point. And I think that we could also do more in terms of all parliamentary working groups, or cross-bench groups, if you like, in the Jersey context. And I think that we could do that in terms of interest groups. It's been said that no individual section of this assembly has the monopoly on ideas or policy, and that actually Deputy Martin herself said that there's much talent in this assembly. I think that's true. There's also much talent outside of the assembly which perhaps hasn't had the opportunity to get in here yet either. And it is probably incumbent on us, and we don't need to wait for the government to suggest it or even the privileged committee, that if there are interest areas, whether they be to do with human rights, to do with housing, to do with other social or economic interests, there's nothing to stop us forming those groups as backbenchers with ministers and actually discussing policy openly and doing that. But of course, there's a much easier way to do it. You form a political party, or you join a political party. I think it's been said elsewhere that if you want to improve your workplace, you join a union. If you want to improve society, you might join some of the many groups that exist in the charitable sector. And I think if you want to improve your island and improve politics, you join a political party. Now, it's been said by the Constable of St Martin that actually this could be seen as a vote of no confidence in the Council of Ministers. I'm not sure how that works necessarily, because if we're going to have to wait for this to be put to the public in the form of a referendum, and even a no answer doesn't give us a chance to kick out this government, because actually it's the election which will be the chance to either kick out or endorse this current government. And I firmly think that's where the battle lines should be drawn. And I would ask actually the Deputy and the many backbench members perhaps in this Assembly, and even assistant ministers and perhaps even ministers who are privately critical of perhaps some of the direction or some of the systemic failings that we have, to consider their positions in the future. Because I don't think, even if you are a talented individual, and no doubt we all bring different talents to this Assembly, simply by being elected to one of the seats in this Assembly doesn't give us the right to govern. The right to govern currently happens by the mandate of this Assembly, as we all know. But that is where the deficiency lies, because the public don't have any say in who becomes the next government. And to their credit, the Council of Ministers have to work as a team, and they do work as a team under collective responsibility. And that's what any self-respecting party would have to do if they were in government, even as a coalition. They would have to do that. The issue, of course, is that they're a coalition of 11 different members without any party mandate, and some of them have to rip up their manifestos as soon as they get into the Council of Ministers to abide by collective responsibility. Even the Chief Minister can't push through policy that he wants to, that he stood on for election to the public and to this Assembly, because he doesn't think he can get it through either his council or the Assembly, and that clearly is the restraints under which we work. So I think there are positive things that we can do. We can demand better of the current system whilst we're in this Assembly. And I would suggest that actually a referendum, if nothing else, apart from the question not giving us a clear direction for the future, it would act as a distraction for the next election, when we should be debating the fundamental policy differences, the direction of the Council of Ministers, to what extent they've got it right, to what extent they haven't got it right, but more importantly, what are the policy directions and alternative policies that people are putting forward. So I do put a challenge out to members both within this Assembly and potential candidates outside, looking in, thinking about maybe whether they want to join this esteemed body, whether they might consider some of the ideas that they have, if they are shared with other people who are like-minded, and if there is a current anti-government mood and people have constructive ideas for a different direction of travel, then why do members not simply get together? That there is a party already which exists, and we're currently accepting applications from existing members and those outside the Assembly. But similarly, if this particular brand is not for you, then form your own brand. And one of the key policies that you can put in your manifesto is that we...
Deputy, I've given you considerable latitude, but you really must come back to the proposition and not invite membership of your party. And while I'm addressing...
And you stopped me just as I was about to get back into the proposition.
Yeah, it's always the way.
What was it the former Constable of St John's used to say? Cut me off at the knees, or something like that. I won't resort to that cliche quite yet. And the point is that you can achieve what this referendum, this proposition sets out to achieve in a different way, because let's be frank, it's probably not going to get through today. You can actually put it in your collective manifestos, and you can call yourself, if you like, a one-issue party. One of the issues, the single issue, is that we want to get rid of a ministerial government and replace it with, I don't know, because it hasn't been specified, but that might be to replace it with a committee system, or to just pull something out of a hat and replace it with that. And whilst you're about that, you could also put some other policies in there, perhaps to do with a living wage, or to do with long-term funding of higher education. And really, the possibilities are endless. And wouldn't it be great for once for the public to have a clear option, and it could be done, of course, under a coalition, not just to get rid of ministerial government, but actually to replace the government with some other leadership with a clear vision, a better vision, and one which is more responsive to the public. I don't think the referendum's the way forward on this issue, but I do think there's a lot of common ground to improve the way we currently run, even in the next year and a half, but certainly in future assemblies.
Deputy, can I also ask you to withdraw the word nobble, which is unparliamentary, in talks of nobbling other members? You could talk about persuading them.
I'll withdraw nobble and add it to the list, sir.
Thank you. It's always a good thing to learn. Does any other member wish to speak? Senator Ferguson.
I thought people would like to hear me in silence. I retract that, sir, unreservedly. You know, the problem, as I've been thinking about as we sit here listening to the views pushing for political parties, you know, it's a bit like revolutions and regime change. And the problem with those is that only the people at the top change and everybody else stays the same. So you're sort of generally sort of mistreated by both sets of elites. But anyway, and the problem with Clothier, that he wanted a regional assembly as recommended by the EU. Now, I came in into the States just after the change to ministerial government was agreed. But I worked under the committee system to begin with, and I can say it worked, and it was inclusive. And the public understood it. You know, there are very few of us who've worked in the House now, in the Assembly now, who've worked under that system. But this is not the matter under debate, sir, so I won't linger on it. What I can say is that during the recent election, one of the major complaints I was getting from people was that the Council of Ministers were not listening and that there was perhaps a lack of transparency. Now, Senator Farnham has already referred to the public being influenced by the media. I regret to say, but I don't know where he's been recently, but with the advent of the internet and social media, the public is now very much better informed. I mean, how else does the Royal Square bubble explain Brexit, the election of Mr. Trump as the next president of the USA, and not to mention Alderney? And there's a referendum in Italy shortly, and some general elections during Europe, and I suspect that the parliamentary bubbles in Europe are going to be equally shocked. Deputy Mezek talks about the change.je survey. I think the only way we can decide whether it's valid is what was the sample size. But, to go back to the point, the problem is that the population feels that no one is listening, and they also perceive scrutiny as being ignored. Now, Deputy Martin is offering us a genuine referendum, despite what both the Reform Party and the Council of Ministers both say. We do have a... Sorry, wrong page. The referendum being proposed is going to take place in just under 18 months' time. Now, this gives plenty of time for PPC to come up with a plan B. And I would respectfully suggest that they review the Swiss constitution if they're short of ideas, because that is very much more direct democracy than either the committee system or the Council of Ministers. So, yes, I think we ought to have a referendum, sir, and I will be voting for this proposition.
St. Peter.
Thank you, sir. I think Deputy Martin is actually acting as the loudspeaker of the voice of the people and bringing forward the report to her proposition, because if you talk to people, they are very unhappy with the way that government is running at the moment. And I too am critical of both the ministers, but I'm assistant minister too. But I talk to them. I tell them what I'm unhappy about, and we talk about the issues, and I might make a recommendation. They're free to ignore me, and they often do. But actually we have a very good working relationship. But we can work within to actually help to improve ourselves. One of the things that that really, my own experience of coming into government, into the States, is I came initially in as a backbencher. I was the Vice Chairman on the Public Accounts Committee initially, and also on the Environment Scrutiny Panel at the same time. And that was a very interesting piece of work to do. It was only when later, at the end of my first term, I was invited to go into Treasury as Assistant Minister, I saw a completely different side of government by being inside the government itself, working alongside the Council of Ministers. And it's a great shame that most members in here won't actually have that experience, because the breadth of that experience that it gives you and seeing the amount of work that goes on inside the ministries is phenomenal. And it's unfortunate that people cannot see that. And Senator Balash raised that very point in his speech, which the rules that we operate under at the moment doesn't allow all of us to be able to see the workings and the ramifications that work inside ministerial government. And that's one thing that if we do change anything, is one thing that I would certainly support the change of. So you could actually work inside the ministries, everybody have an opportunity to work inside them. In talking some time ago now, probably about 3 or 4 years ago even, to one of the members that was on the Clothier panel, he did say to me at that time that one of the recommendations when you change a government, you should, after a period of 2 or 3 years, review it and see how it's performing against what you expected it to do. And I would have rather seen that recommendation coming through today as a recommendation to ask the Chief Minister to bring forward a review on the ministerial government to see how we can improve it and make it better. Because it's not just ministerial, it's not just the Council of Ministers as an issue here. And I know I'm not going to be popular saying it, but there's also issues with scrutiny in itself. Yes, it is being ignored. But sometimes the way that scrutiny is operated, they actually create the environment where they are ignored. For example, there are two. Recently there was a select committee report done in the United Kingdom about select committees, and they are very critical, that's equivalent of our scrutiny panels, they're very critical of the scrutiny members who use the process of scrutiny, their select committees, for their own personal objectives, looking for a headline rather than having an outcome they're looking to achieve in working with government. And quite often, if you look at the way we work with scrutiny panels here, private briefings for scrutiny are excellent. They are good working environments. Public meetings become formal and almost aggressively challenging. And that is not helpful to actually get that throughput of information across, where scrutiny members then feel more engaged and able to contribute more openly, and the ministers themselves become more receptive in a less challenging environment. So I think Deputy Martin is right to echo the voice of the general public at the moment, but I don't think the referendum is the way to do it. I would have rather seen her asking the Chief Minister to institute a review of the process of the ministerial government at the moment to see how better we can improve it. Because I do believe we can improve it, given the will and given the motivation. Thank you, sir.
Speak. Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Just briefly, sir. So I've had the privilege of working in both systems. Firstly, as a clerk and officer in the civil service, and I came into the States just as ministerial government began. So I've seen through both ends of the telescope, and members will know that I've been on the ministerial side and on scrutiny. I don't believe this is the right time to question the system we currently have. Question it, yes, but change it, no. We need a whole review of the whole setup we have here in this assembly, sir, the electoral reform process. All those sort of things need to happen first. But I think the Deputy's intentions are honourable. She is, as members have said, reflecting what other members of the public are saying, and we are there to do that. And I hear similar from constituents myself. I walked in today with a constituent that actually sits on our Roads Committee, and he was quite adamant that the ministerial system simply doesn't work. It wasn't until I spent 5 minutes explaining to him how it actually works that he kind of started changing his view a little bit. And that's the issue here, sir, communication. I don't think our current government is very good at communicating. They get bogged down with things that are minutiae in terms of the public seeing that minutiae instead of the bigger picture stuff. Perhaps the bigger picture stuff is not as interesting to the public as ice rinks, as nursery education funding, and, dare I say it, higher education funding. But the government isn't very good at communicating that. Why get bogged down with a debate about own goals, really, about the ice rink and nursery education funding and not putting the minimum wage up to the same rate as everybody else? Why get backed into that corner, which creates this horrible feeling amongst the public that somehow they're not being listened to? And it's about communication. And I think that's where the government needs to resolve matters. It's on communication. It's not about creating what was, when I was in the civil service, 48 committees. We used to go round and round in circles to try and get any decisions made. And that was from an officer's point of view, which is what I was at the time. And then suddenly I came into the States and was faced with what was 10 ministries then. It seemed to me a much, much better system. So I wouldn't want to see that changed in a hurry. But my biggest issue with this proposition, though, and other members have mentioned it, is what would you replace it with? So we've got a referendum here that makes the public think, if they say no to the current system, which is basically voting against the current government, almost a vote of no confidence, I think one member mentioned it or described it as, but with nothing to replace it with, it's the wrong question perhaps to ask at the wrong time. And I think the population would be disappointed perhaps in the answer that was accumulated from that bit of market research really, and you'd have no solution to offer. So without a solution and just a question, do you like the current government system or don't you, is the question they're really being asked, would be of no benefit, I think, to anybody, least of all the populace at large who want action on various things and a solid, strong government that has a mandate, that has collective responsibility, can actually make things happen. And we on the other side, I say we, scrutiny, public accounts and so on, scrutinise and challenge that, and we can challenge that in this assembly, which we do. And that government is still in the minority, which is really unusual. And you say that to people in other parliaments, as I've done on conferences and so on, and they find that's remarkable. I think that's a quite quaint thing about our parliament, but it kind of works. And I know Deputy Tabby disagrees and says that people can be nobbled, I think the word he used there, I think was regarded as unparliamentary, so sorry to repeat it. But
so there's no need to repeat it.
Sorry, sir. It is parliamentary. Anyway, the fact is that I think the system works, sir, because there is that check and balance. And I'm sorry if I disagree with some of my scrutiny colleagues, but I can say from my current experience on PAC that the government has listened and has taken on board the recommendations that have been made by my committee and the CNAG. Not completely, but neither would I expect them to. But they have taken on board some of those recommendations. And I'll be following up to make sure that that continues, because I'm not so sure that's sustainable, but I can say that those recommendations, when made, have been taken on board, particularly by the Treasury in recent times. So I perhaps breaking the mould there. So I can't support this proposition for the reasons I mentioned, which is it's too narrow, it's the wrong time, and it's not providing any kind of proper solution should the referendum go against the current status quo. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak? Senator Routier.
Thank you, sir. I'm one of those members who've been around probably too long. Been around. Yeah, I know I did. But I've during that time, obviously, I've experienced quite a bit of different feelings from the general public, and during that period, there's been many times over the years that people have been dissatisfied with government, whether it be, but even before ministerial government, there was, even before my time, when to think about the demonstrations in the streets for the introduction of Social Security, a coffin being trailed around in the square, and people were totally dissatisfied with government. But the government has to do its work and do what it thinks is right for our population. I think I can recall the committee system when we talked. The proposer of this proposition talked about the giants that were around at that time. There were giants, but they were giants, and the committees sometimes didn't have a say in what was actually happened. the presidents used to run the show, and might have had 5 or 6 members with them sitting in a committee once a month, but the presidents get on with it, and don't get with these rose-tinted glasses of what it was like in the past was what we should be heading back to. I do agree there is a need for us to be more inclusive, and I think we had a meeting, the Chief Minister and I, with Deputy Martin about how we could achieve that with assistant ministers, and we've got quite a few suggestions about how that might be achieved, with assistant ministers being able to be on scrutiny panels as well. I think we should actually aim to be doing that. Certainly, that is something to aim for. There's some comments. I think it was the Deputy of St John who was very critical about the Council of Ministers currently, and he's got some justification in saying that sometimes we're...
Point of order, sir, I'm the constable.
Sorry, did I say the constable? I might have been talking about the deputy. Sorry, the constable of St John, about the Council of Ministers not being very timely with various propositions and things coming forward. I have to say, and there's another somebody also mentioned about that there were more departmental officers now than there were in the past. Actually, in reality, that's not the case. There might be more people working in the coalface, working for the states generally, but policy officers within departments, they are really hard-working people who are struggling to get things done and prepared for us. And I think we need to recognise that we see them working late at night and at weekends to get things done, to meet the timetables which this Assembly sets. And it is very, very difficult for them. So I hope members will recognise that. Deputy Mezek quite rightly identified that it's not necessarily the system that is fault, it's the personalities that are in the system. That may well be the case, but the people we have in this Assembly are elected by our community. From that, we then elect a Chief Minister. We're responsible for that. I can recall that the Chief Minister has attempted to form a Council of Ministers. He's approached certain members, and they've declined the offer to become involved because they want to be backbenchers. And now they come back as backbenchers criticising the Council of Ministers. They haven't wanted to be involved, which I think is a great shame, because they obviously have the ability and the talents to help formulate policy and to bring forward. But to come now and actually being very critical of the Council of Ministers is a great disappointment. The actual practicalities of this proposition, sir, I think leave a lot to be desired, because if it was to be had that we to have a referendum at the next election day, we would then be in such a position where we would be aiming to dismantle what we're going to have, those people who've just been elected, and there would be so much uncertainty for that during that period that it would be something which we shouldn't really be putting the next Assembly through, because it's not something that would be a very easy thing to achieve. I hope members will reject this proposition, but I do accept we need to do a lot better of working together as an Assembly, and all members should try and support each other rather than just be backstabbing and having a go at each other all the time. Please do try to work together.
Is it lunchtime, sir?
Sir,
do we adjourn for lunch?
I'm sorry?
Do we adjourn for lunch?
The adjournment's been proposed. So the States now stand adjourned until 2:15 this afternoon.